Chapter 237. Tan was led by Charlie, and there was a tall beauty next to him. Charlie had been blushing and stuttering. Although he already had a girlfriend, he was still nervous in the face of such a beauty. This beauty was Tan's partner in the interactive session tomorrow. Her name was Jean Ling. It was said that she was a model and also a client of the pet center. This time, she was invited by Xiaoguo to help. Tan looked at Jean Ling critically and gave her 80 points. He felt that it would be better if the skirt was shorter. Unfortunately, it couldn't be too revealing. There were many children who came here. If they were dressed too skimpily, the parents of their children would definitely complain. There had been complaints about skimpy clothes at famous cat shows before. Therefore, even if it was summer, the people working in the venue would still pay attention to their image. After getting familiar with Jean Ling, Tan left Charlie and nestled in Jean Ling's arms. Although Jean Ling didn't have much contact with Tan, she was very active. As long as Tan made a slight move, she knew where to go. She had heard that this cat was very arrogant and had a bad temper. The people in Xiaoguo's shop all followed its wishes, and she wouldn't refute the cat's wishes. It would be easier for them to cooperate with each other tomorrow. Tan was not interested in the competitions of the precious cat species. He just glanced at them and asked Jean Ling to go to the house cat group. This time, the house cat group was exhibiting a dragonly cat owned by a client of Xiaoguo's pet center. This dragonly cat was participating in a public competition for the first time and was a little anxious in the cage. Every cat that participated in the competition had to reach out and hug it, feel its bone mass, look at its muscle state, head, body, tail, and limbs, coordination, and the health of the cat, and so on. When Tan looked over there, a foreign judge was holding a cat, touching the cat's fur and evaluating the cat. The host next to him was holding a microphone and translating the judge's words to the audience. The cat was also very patient. It didn't show any impatience after being hugged and touched. It was probably used to it. Of course, these judges must know cats very well and know how to better comfort a cat. Originally, in Xiaoguo's mind, the best cat in the house cat group should be Tan. Unfortunately, the Jiao family didn't agree, and Tan didn't want to go. Not only did it have to be locked in a cage for onlookers, but most of the cats participating in that kind of competition had good tempers. The judges wouldn't have too much reaction when they held them. Tan definitely couldn't stand these. Another reason was that it was said that non-sterilized cats that won this kind of award were basically treated as breeding cats. Tan definitely didn't want to have anything to do with a female cat. There were also many people in the house cat group. Compared with the expensive cat breeds, the cats in the house cat group were more approachable. Expensive cats were only used for viewing. It wasn't easy to raise them. They were too expensive and took a lot of effort. However, people had the most contact with house cats, such as dragonly cats, which were all common cats. Tan looked around. Other than the commonly seen cats and the popular dragonly, there were also Lin Qing Persian cats that people were interested in. There were 2 Persian cats participating in the house cat group competition. One was a white Persian cat with mandarin duck eyes, and the other was a whipping hydrangea. The so-called whipping hydrangea looked similar to the white Persian cat, but its tail was black, and there was a black patch on its head. Its tail was long and could be swung to the black patch on its head, so it was called whipping hydrangea. Speaking of which, this cat reminded Tan of the cat called Longan that he had seen before. It was just that Longan's hair was short and there was no black patch on its head. At the house cat competition, one of the judges was from China. She looked young and was quite good-looking. She could be considered a beauty. This beautiful judge attracted the attention of many spectators. When she evaluated a participating house cat, she also stroked, teased, and talked to the cat. The cat also became very docile in her hands. Charlie flipped through the information in his hand and talked to Jean Ling about the beautiful judge. Hearing their words, Tan knew that the beautiful judge named Gong Qin was also a veterinary professional. She had taken her own cat to participate in more than one competition, but later she didn't have time to take care of the cat because of work. Later, she didn't raise it much. However, she was qualified as a CFA judge. Sometimes she was invited to be a judge in such activities and had contact with more cats. While Charlie and Jean Ling were talking about the beautiful referee, Zheng Tan looked around. Suddenly, her eyes paused as if she saw an acquaintance. No, it was two acquaintances, and Zheng Tan jumped down from Jean Ling's arms and walked over there. Jean Ling was shocked when she saw the cat jump away. She was afraid that the cat would run away, but then she saw that the black cat didn't run around, but walked to the side area. She was relieved and followed Charlie. In an area on the side, several animal charity organizations were there. Some cat owners gathered there to consult. There were rows of chairs next to them. The people who came in to watch and some cat owners who participated in the activities rested there when they were free. Fong Mengmeng was holding a pamphlet given by the animal charity organization in her hand and was looking through it. Fong Xiaokong was chatting with someone next to her. It seemed that he met an acquaintance here again and was being pulled to chat. Next to Fong Mengmeng was a cat with tricolored patches on its body. In the area around this cat, there was no other cat except for it within a radius of 5 meters. Even the cats that were brought there to rest would scream at it with their hair standing on end, pressing their ears and shouting for the cat owner to take them away. Zheng Tan calculated the time. Demi, this guy, was almost 1 year old. Sometimes, Zheng Tan was envious of the Monseigneur's good genes. It could be seen by looking at Peanut Candy and Demi. Although they were the third generation, in terms of size, they were obviously bigger than other cats. Of course, there were many cats that came here to participate in the competition, especially those cat breeds that were larger in size. Coupled with their fluffy long hair, they looked very big, so Demi was not too outstanding. However, Demi's hair was not as fluffy as those long-haired cats. If the hair was removed, Demi was definitely bigger than those cats. Zheng Tan walked around the people coming and going and observed Demi, who was quietly squatting there. In Zheng Tan's heart, he had always classified himself as the same generation as Li Yuanba and the Monseigneur. In this way, Peanut Candy was his nephew, and Demi was his grandnephew. Demi had inherited the aura of the Monseigneur and Li Yuanba very well. It could be seen from the reactions of the surrounding cats. Moreover, when Demi pulled a long face, it directly reminded Zheng Tan of Li Yuanba. Demi was squatting there with its eyelids slightly lowered, as if it did not care about everything around it. It was not until Zheng Tan walked over that it raised its head and looked at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan did not know if this little guy still remembered him. After all, when Demi was taken away, it was still so small. Also, if this child inherited its father's temperament, would it fight with him on the spot? Just as Zheng Tan was thinking about whether to get closer, Demi had already come up to him. It sniffed, and the initial wariness in its eyes lessened, and there was a sense of intimacy. When Fong Mengmeng's gaze moved away from the small booklet and looked at Demi, she saw Demi, who was usually cold to other cats and would even slap them if they were annoyed, tilting its head and rubbing against the black cat. Fong Mengmeng stared at Zheng Tan for a while, then suddenly shouted, "Are you black charcoal?" Fong Xiaokong, who was chatting with someone, heard her and looked over. His gaze fell on Zheng Tan. "Yo, black charcoal, why are you here?" Because his daughter said that she wanted to come to Linzhou City to participate in this event, Fong Xiaokong specially cleared his weekend to accompany his daughter on the plane. His wife did not follow, so that Fong Xiaokong could perform more and spend more time with his daughter. His daughter wanted to bring Demi over, and Fong Xiaokong had already prepared all kinds of documents. At this time, Charlie and Jean Ling also came over, and Fong Xiaokong chatted with them for a while. "There's a competition tomorrow?" "That's good, let's go support them tomorrow," Fong Xiaokong said with a look of anticipation. Fong Mengmeng nodded at the side. "Mr. Fong, is this your family's cat? Which competition did it participate in?" Charlie asked. Jean Ling was also curious. The cat in front of her felt a little different from other cats, but she couldn't tell why. Could it be a cat breed that she didn't know? "This is my daughter's cat, but it didn't participate in the competition." Fong Xiaokong didn't say too much. Since he knew that Charlie was from the pet center, he was on guard. Mao said that Demi's father was in the pet center. In the event venue, Fang Xiaokong had a special certificate. Demi didn't participate in any competitions, but was brought in for a walk. Then, Fang Mengmeng could communicate more with the cat friends and ask about raising cats. The degree of freedom was much greater than the cat owners who brought in the competition. Anyway, there were people who knew, so such a certificate was very simple. Charlie and Jean Ling wanted to take a closer look because they were curious about Demi. When they were about to reach out and touch it, Demi raised its head and glanced at them. Charlie and Jean Ling's hearts immediately trembled. This cat's eyes were so cold, and they felt that this cat was not to be trifled with. Cough, this cat must be very troublesome to raise, right? Charlie retracted his hand and said. It's not troublesome, Demi is very obedient. When Fang Mengmeng mentioned Demi, she smiled and squinted her eyes. She reached out her tender white hand and touched Demi's head. Many cats gave people a completely different feeling when they had a straight face and when they acted cute. For example, Demi who faced Charlie and Jean Ling and Jingtan and Fang Mengmeng. One was cold and the other was gentle, one was difficult to get close to, and the other took the initiative to get close to. When Demi raised its head to look at people, due to the lighting in this area of the venue, Demi's pupils shrank slightly. Together with Demi's straight face that resembled Li Yuanba's, it looked much sharper. When its pupils dilated due to excitement, coupled with its coquettish actions, it let people know that this cat could also get close to people. That was even more adorable. Charlie looked at the difference between before and after and laughed dryly. He thought for a while and said, Mr. Fang, your Demi is quite similar to the two cats in our pet center. I'm telling you, I'm definitely not lying to you. One of the cats is called Li Yuanba, and the other cat is Li Yuanba's son, called Peanut Candy. Fang Xiaokong was already thinking of leaving. The moment Charlie opened his mouth, he said the two taboo names that Mao mentioned. Anyway, his daughter had played here for a long time, so he might as well leave first. When Fang Xiaokong held Fang Mengmeng's hand and left, Demi raised its tail and did not look around. It followed closely beside Fang Xiaokong and Fang Mengmeng. It was too lazy to pay attention to the people and cats around it. Chapter 238. On Saturday, Jingtan familiarized himself with the general events and layout of the venue. There were many people who came over that day, especially those who liked cats but couldn't raise cats for various reasons. They were addicted to watching, and when they left, they discussed coming together tomorrow. When they returned to the hotel, Jingtan listened to Charlie and the others talking about the day's events. Xiaoguo went out to expand his network. The harvest of the first day of the event made Xiaoguo satisfied. He won 3 medals. It was not a good result, but it was not bad either. It was enough to keep up appearances. Xiaoguo's main focus was on cat food and peripheral products. The sales of cat food were good today, and there were a few people who contacted Xiaoguo to supply it. It was said that the cat of the woman who was with Xiaoguo's team and who was shouting on the bus in the middle of the way did not get a result that satisfied her this time. The cat almost fought with another cat that participated at the time. However, for the woman, although it was a pity that she did not win an award, she still loved her cat. This made Jingtan's impression of her a lot better. In fact, many cat owners who came to participate in this event, even if their cats didn't win any awards, they were only there to play a minor role. They didn't care much about the gains and losses, unlike those who mainly did commercial-oriented advertisements for breeding cats. At the venue, Jingtan saw several cat owners comforting each other. Some of them even comforted their cats. They did not care if their cats were depressed because they did not win an award. Perhaps they were also telling themselves that the important thing was to participate. In their hearts, their cats were always the best. Jingtan did not listen carefully to the discussions of others. He only knew that Xiaoguo and the others had a good harvest on the first day. He had to prepare more for tomorrow's project. In the evening, Jingtan and Jean Ling practiced together again. In fact, it was mainly Jingtan who was running. Jean Ling just had to sit there and be a qualified vase. When Xiaoguo came back at night, he was worried that Jingtan might be under some kind of psychological pressure. He didn't expect to find that Jingtan had already fallen asleep on the bed. Compared to Jingtan's calmness, Xiaoguo was still a little worried. Even if the cat performed well when his team was shooting advertisements, there would be too many people at the venue tomorrow. The audience, especially the children, would be screaming and yelling, which would affect the cat's mood. Today, several of the participating cats were in bad condition. Sometimes, slow cats had their advantages. Take the few cats in Xiaoguo's store for example. If you really wanted to talk about psychological quality, there was nothing much to talk about. To put it bluntly, their reactions were slow, and their temperaments were too gentle. Xiaoguo knew that Jingtan was different from other cats. Moreover, because of the great harvest on the first day, he hoped that more people would know about Green Wings, obviously, Pet Center, and the products in the industry chain that he had created. There should be good results, right? In the evening, Xiaoguo, who was supposed to fall asleep after drinking too much, had insomnia. He didn't fall asleep until the second half of the night. The next day, the second day of the event, Jingtan got up in the morning and had breakfast refreshed. He picked up Charlie's wet and warm towel and wiped his face. Then he followed Xiaoguo and the others to the venue. Before she got out of the car, Jingtan looked out of the car window. There were a lot of people outside the venue. There were a lot of sheds selling pet necessities, and there were also a variety of cat climbing frames on display. There was a long line at the other entrance of the venue. There were many people who brought cats here today because there were a series of activities for pet cats, such as free hairdressing, epidemic prevention, physical examination, and so on. Of course, the free activities were limited. If you wanted something more detailed, you would have to contact and make an appointment. Then you would go directly to the physical store. Today's free activities were just to show off to the cat owners. The layout of the venue was also slightly changed. There was a space in the center for the cats to perform and interact. As soon as Xiaoguo arrived at the venue, he was pulled over to discuss things. When he left, he asked Charlie and Jean Ling to take Jingtan to familiarize himself with the environment. Jingtan looked at the staff over there who were checking the cats and the person in charge who participated in this event. By the way, they were confirming whether there were any objections to the order of appearance. After all, the order of appearance was also drawn by drawing lots. No one could blame anyone, and some people who couldn't come in time because of unexpected situations would change the order. There were 10 cats participating in this segment. Jingtan was the 7th. If it started at 9 o'clock, according to the calculation of 15 minutes per cat, it would get to 11 o'clock. Of course, there was no absolute statement about the time of each cat. Some might end in 5 minutes, and some might last longer. The deciding factor was the cat's performance and their popularity. They could attract more attention from the audience and ask for photos. The higher the popularity, the longer the duration. Jingtan looked at the list in Charlie's hand, then looked away uninterestedly. At this time, some of the cat owners and cats who participated in this segment arrived one after another. Jingtan glanced at them. The cats looked very smart. The interaction with their owners or trainers showed how familiar they were with each other. Moreover, these cats didn't have a leash, but a few of them were wearing small clothes. They looked quite familiar. Jingtan also found that most of these cats were not purebred expensive cats. Also, many expensive breeds had many defects. Some people were already standing on the second floor, looking at the open space on the first floor expectantly. "BC, let's go." Charlie called out to Jingtan. They were going there to report and sign. The inspectors needed to look at the photos of people and cats during the registration. Because they were going to appear in public, Xiaoguo asked them to call Jingtan BC. The name of the contestant on the registration list was Black Sea, and the breed was a domestic cat. There were only 10 contestants, so it didn't take long to check and sign on the spot. Jean Ling took Jingtan and rested on the side after wandering around. It's starting. Someone in the crowd called out to his partner. Jingtan glanced at the crowd that was gathering quickly. Many people were holding cameras and DV. A few fathers let their children sit on their necks, while the children held the DV and took photos. Seeing so many people paying attention to him, Tan, who had a casual attitude, felt that his performance later must not be too bad. Since he had decided to participate in the event, he had to show some ability so that those with cameras and DV would not be too disappointed. The owner of the first cat to appear had put in more effort. The clothes on the cat would not interfere with its movements, and when it appeared, it stood on a ball and rolled out. Rolling a ball looked very simple, but in fact, it was not. When Tan first tried it in the pet center, he failed several times. Later, he got used to it. Good. Someone clapped and cheered. He didn't know if it was a trick. After that person cheered and applauded, the surrounding crowd also applauded. After the cat rolled the ball, it also jumped in circles, drilled in circles, and jumped obstacles. Although people had seen these projects in circus performances on TV, the feeling was different on the spot. At the end of the performance, the cat stood on the man's shoulder and bowed to the audience, causing another round of applause. It didn't react much to those who took photos and turned on the flash. It just narrowed its eyes. In general, it was calm. After the performance, several lucky audience members who had drawn ticket numbers went to take photos with the cat and its owner. Tan observed carefully. A few of the people in charge had already started telling the people in the crowd not to use the flashing lights. After all, not every cat was as indifferent to the flashing lights as the cat at the beginning of the show. The next few cat performances were similar. Some male audience members' attention was on the cat owners with cat ears. There was a cat group's musical performance that attracted a lot of attention. The musical instruments were different from professional instruments. Some of them were more like children's toys, but they could make sounds. Moreover, there were special modifications on them that made it easier for cats to operate. Although the cat group only played a song like "Happy Birthday to You," which was very simple, and there were a few wrong notes in the middle of the performance, people still applauded enthusiastically. The cat in front of Tan performed single parallel bars. It only used its two front paws to move from one end of the bars to the other. When it played the horizontal bar, there were a few more movements. For a cat, it was very good to be able to do that. Tan had thought that the performance was too simple and that people would be dissatisfied. However, it turned out that he had thought too much. People didn't have high expectations for animals. Even if the cats only jumped 2 circles and did 2 somersaults, people would still feel that it was worth it to come. 7th, Black Sea from the Green Wings Association in Chuhua City. When the host announced the name, his heart actually stopped for a second. There were very few cats with this name. Even if it was an English name, this name was too strange. Black was fine, but there was also a C. What did C mean? Could there be A, B, and so on? After the audience heard the host's name, some people became excited. F*CK, is it that BC? A live BC. I didn't expect to see a live BC performance on this trip. I used to watch its cat food advertisement video and felt good, but this is a live show. I can't shout, cut. I don't know how the performance will be. What is BC? Is it very famous? It's obvious that you don't mix in the XX pet forum. This cat is very famous in the XX forum. My cat food is the brand of this cat's advertisement. Some people were talking about who Black Sea was, and the props had already begun to be set up in the field. Looking at the props that were set up one by one, the attention of the onlookers gradually shifted. F*CK. What is that prop? Is it a wall? Those stools marked with letters are a little strange. Are they going to go in a zigzag line? Wow! What a beauty! Is this going to be a Beauty and the Beast show? Where is the beast? Amidst the discussion, Tan and Jean Ling walked into the field. Jean Ling was dressed in a small and fresh style today. She looked more like a little girl next door. When she smiled, she had a sweet and warm feeling. This made some of the male audience stare at her. Tan didn't bring any decorations or those small clothes. It could be said that he was naked on the field. When he entered the field, Jean Ling was the one who attracted attention. However, there were also people who paid attention to Jing Tan and knew more about cats. They could tell that the cat that was appearing now was different from the cats in front of him. Chapter 239. After Jean Ling entered the venue, she sat down on a high chair at the side. There was a simple shelf beside her, and Jing Tan separated from Jean Ling and continued to walk to the other side of the venue. Jing Tan and Jean Ling were on both sides of the venue. There was a prop wall that was more than 4 meters tall near Jean Ling. The wall was at a right angle of 90 degrees. It stood upright, separating Jean Ling and Jing Tan. If one looked from the second floor of the venue, Jean Ling was sitting inside the right angle wall. Most of the audience could see Jean Ling and Jing Tan, but Jing Tan and Jean Ling could not see each other. They were blocked by the wall. There was nothing on the wall that was suitable for climbing, but the wall was a little rough. Jing Tan came to the expected place and stood there. Whether it was those who had performed or those who did not bring their cats to perform, they all looked over there in confusion. Didn't this woman in the venue need to follow her cat? One had to know that during the performance, they were always by their cat's side. Even if they were not by their cat's side, they were not far away. They had never seen a situation where they were so far away from their cats and were directly separated by something. Just as people were thinking about what this woman wanted to do, Jean Ling took a wooden guitar that Charlie handed to her. She plucked the strings with her fingers and began to play. The surrounding discussions gradually quieted down because of the sound of the guitar. The clear notes scattered in every corner of the venue. They were freely retracted in Jean Ling's fingers, free and casual, as if the sincere and pure emotions of a young person were naturally revealed. Looking at Jean Ling sitting there, she was dressed in fresh clothes, and the corners of her lips were slightly curled with a faint smile. When she plucked the strings, it made people feel as if this person was a dancing warm fire. Without a doubt, at the moment of the opening, Jean Ling was the focus of the crowd's attention. Some people were already thinking that even if the cat did not perform well, they would still applaud and cheer for it just for the sake of this guitar song. On the other side of the neglected white right-angled wall, Jing Tan also moved. When Jean Ling played the guitar to a certain note, Jing Tan jumped onto the first stool marked with the letter A, and then jumped onto the second stool marked with the letter B. Jing Tan felt that this kind of performance was extremely retarded and lowered his IQ. However, it was clear that Xiao Guo understood the audience's thoughts better. Jing Tan was a bystander. If the audience watched Jing Tan jump on the stool according to the alphabetical order, they would praise this cat for being amazing. Because it did not jump randomly, it proved that it jumped in the right order. Placing so many stools, especially when there was no conductor to guide it, was also a highlight. And that was indeed the case. Some people in the crowd had already begun to notice. Some children were even reciting the Pinyin alphabet along with Jing Tan. They were more familiar with Pinyin than English. As long as one child started, the rest of the children, who were brought by their parents, began to perform as well. Therefore, one could hear the childish sounds of bo, ci, do, fo, gu, and so on. The children only looked at the jumping order of the black cat in the field, while some people saw more. That cat is stepping on the beat. Someone exclaimed softly. When the people around heard this, they stared at the black cat in the field for a while and found that every time the cat jumped onto a stool, it would step on the spot a few times. They didn't pay attention to it before and thought that the cat was adjusting. Now, it seemed that there was another mystery. It's true. This cat knows music? No way. It should have been trained like this during training. It's just a live accompaniment, someone said, thinking that he had guessed the truth. Jing Tan ignored the reactions of the people around him. He jumped a few stools in the first stage. It was just a simple beginning. Due to the limited size of the field, walking in a straight line would not have much expressiveness. Therefore, the stools were placed along the line in the order of the alphabet. After jumping over the first few stools, Jing Tan jumped onto a stool. There was a shelf next to the stool, and there was a long paper box on the shelf. Jing Tan opened the paper box and took out a rose from it. The rose had been treated, and the thorns had been removed. The branch, which had been cut to the right length, was wrapped in a layer of clean paper. Jing Tan picked up the rose and returned to the stool next to him. He stepped on the stool and waited for the next beat to begin. The people around who were originally watching the show gradually stopped paying attention to Jean Ling. Instead, they focused on the cat in the field. They were curious about what the cat would do next. With the rose in his mouth, he walked rhythmically with cat steps across the horizontal bar. The distance between the two adjacent letter stools was widened. If Jing Tan jumped directly, he could of course jump, but according to Xiaoguo's plan, that was not the case. The rhythm of the guitar song gradually began to speed up. Jing Tan stepped on the rhythm 3 times at first, but he stepped on it twice. Moreover, he jumped on the stool at the back and widened the distance. There was a vertical board between the 2 stools. When Jing Tan jumped up, he used the board in the middle to jump to the next stool. Just like the skill that Li Yuanba had taught Jing Tan to jump through the window, he used the object in the middle to exert force and change direction. As long as he controlled the force and direction well, he could land steadily on the target location. Jing Tan had also done this when he was shooting advertisements. One of the stools was probably not fixed properly. When Jing Tan jumped, it wobbled a little. The people around him felt their hearts skip a beat. When they saw the cat land firmly on another stool, they finally exhaled the breath that they had been holding in. Since it was parkour, it was naturally cool to run. As everyone's attention gradually focused on Jing Tan, the rhythm of the guitar song became faster and faster. Jing Tan, who had to wait for the rhythm on the stool every time he jumped, no longer waited. After speeding up, he began to run in people's eyes. In addition to stepping on the stool, he also jumped over the paper circle covered with a thin layer of paper, and then jumped from one grid to another. He was very fast. If they hadn't seen the hole in the middle of the paper circle, people wouldn't have been able to tell that the cat had just passed through the middle of the paper circle. The onlookers only felt that the black shadow in the field was getting faster and faster, like a hurricane, blowing through the field. There was not much discussion around the field. Everyone's eyes were chasing the fast black shadow that flashed by, for fear of missing a link. After successfully passing through the obstacles in the middle and jumping over the last stool, Jing Tan had already arrived in front of the white wall. Black and white, a sharp contrast. Just as people were thinking about whether the cat was going to climb over the wall or find a shortcut to go around it, Jing Tan did not stop or slow down. He jumped up and climbed up at a right angle. In an instant, he climbed from the bottom of the wall to the top. F***CK. Spider-Man? No, it's Spider-Cat. This cat climbing over the wall is too awesome. No, I have to learn from it. Although people around them began to discuss again, everyone's eyes did not move away from the field. They looked at the black cat that skillfully climbed over the high wall. It held the rose in its mouth and jumped onto the shelf next to Jean Ling. It was as if it had descended with the night. Against the dark night, the flames would be even brighter and more dazzling. At this time, the cheerful guitar melody ended with a melody, and the final ending sound seemed to be echoing in the field. Jean Ling's gaze moved from the guitar to the black cat next to her. The faint smile on her face deepened. She raised her arm and took the rose in the cat's mouth. After the performance, Jean Ling bowed to the surroundings to thank them. Jing Tan also lowered his head and nodded to the surroundings twice. The applause from the surroundings continued. Some people were lamenting that this cat was really smart. Some people were lamenting how others trained their cats. Some people were thinking about how to train their cats to use this method to chase after people. Jean Ling heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Although she looked calm just now, she was actually worried to death in her heart. Usually, training and live performances were completely different. She had participated in many performances during university, so her psychological quality was strong. But what about that cat? She could not see the situation on the other side, but it seemed that everything was going smoothly. Jing Tan did not look proud at all. Just like the cat in front of him, he did not know that he had succeeded. In fact, he felt that the performance just now was really low level. To think that he had a cat's body and a human's heart, and he had to be praised by the standards of a cat. It was embarrassing to hear it. There would be no ranking in this segment, so there was not much competitive pressure. However, it was also very important to attract popularity. After the host asked Jean Ling to draw the lucky audience, someone went over to take a photo. A mother brought her child here, so the opportunity to take a photo would definitely be given to her child. However, the child seemed to be a little afraid. She bit her finger and stood in front of Zheng Tan and hesitated for a moment. Then, under her mother's encouragement and Jean Ling's guarantee, she approached Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan squatted on the 1-meter-high shelf. The child's line of sight was just at the same level as Zheng Tan's. Seeing the child standing there stiffly, Zheng Tan reached out his palm and placed it on the child's head. Then, he leaned his head against the child's head and looked at the camera. If it was a human, he would be able to put his hand on the shoulder and act like a good brother. Unfortunately, his hand was too short. However, Zheng Tan was in a good mood today. After the mission was completed, he did not care about anything else. It was also not bad to attract popularity at the same time. The photographer hired by the venue was also a professional. He captured the scene just now and showed the photo to the mother and son. Both mother and son were very satisfied. The child wanted to take another photo, and the photographer agreed. This time, the child was not afraid. He stood beside Zheng Tan with a serious face. He raised his hand and made a pose of Ultraman releasing a big move. What made the surrounding audience laugh was that the black cat beside the child also stood up and made a similar pose. Although it was not a standard cross shape, it looked like it. It was enough. After looking at the second photo, the child laughed happily. He was addicted to taking photos and shouted that he wanted to continue taking photos. However, there were still people waiting to take photos behind him. Moreover, there were already some children at the scene who were shouting to come over and take photos. A few parents went over to negotiate with the person in charge next to them and learned that there was still a chance in the afternoon. However, they were taking photos for free now. When the time came, they would have to spend money. Of course, these parents could still afford to spend money on taking photos. After persuading their children, they temporarily stopped. The child just now was also persuaded by his mother to leave. Before he left, he grumbled, "I'm not done with the pose yet." After receiving a guarantee that he would continue taking photos in the afternoon, he left with 2 photos in his arms, satisfied. While Zheng Tan was busy taking photos with the lucky audience members who had been selected, a few people came out of the capital airport with their luggage. "Hey, are you guys going straight home?" "Of course, I haven't seen my family for a long time." "Naturally, I'll go back first. I've already booked the plane tickets. I have relatives in Beijing. My car is with them. I'm going to drive back to Chuhua City tomorrow. If anyone is going the same way, I'll bring them back together." "Isn't Jiao Mingxing also in Chuhua City?" "Where's Jiao Mingxing?" "He's calling home." This time, he finished his project and came back early. He didn't tell his family. These people were all overseas for exchange or to participate in some cooperative research projects. Some of them had gone out to gain experience. This time, it just so happened that a few of them came back together. While they were talking, Associate Professor Jiao Jiao, Zheng Tan's cat father, hung up the phone and walked over. "I'm not going back to Chuhua City for now. I'm going to Lin City," Associate Professor Jiao said. "Why are you going to Lin City?" someone asked. Chapter 240. Have you remembered all the things to pay attention to? Yes, but boss, do we really have to make it so complicated? Although there were a lot of people who wanted to take photos in the morning, most of them just said so. Usually, not many people will go in the afternoon, right? The people in the working group took a notebook and wrote down the things that Xiao Gua had just said. They also raised their own concerns. "You don't have to worry about this. I'll take care of it." Xiao Gua didn't seem to be worried. He patted the staff on the shoulder and asked them to set up the venue for the photo shoot in the afternoon. After the staff left, Xiaogua had some time to eat a few pieces of watermelon. Although he had been busy since yesterday and was physically and mentally tired, he had gained a lot, especially from the performance in the morning. Although he didn't go to see it, he heard from Charlie and others that among the 10 cats, the black cat from their shop was the most popular. When he thought of Charlie's description of the situation at that time, Xiaogua felt funny. At that time, there were too many people who wanted to take photos. The lucky audience wanted to pose, but after the photo shoot, they didn't expect the cat to be so cooperative. They felt that they had a new idea and wanted to take a few more photos. Therefore, it took a long time. Usually, when the first group finished their performance, the next group took the time to set up the props. However, the group behind Jingtan had been setting up the props for a long time, but the photo shoot was still not over. The people behind them were so angry that they drank several bottles of mineral water. Yes, they said that there was still time in the afternoon to take photos with the celebrity cats. None of the cats who won awards on Saturday left. The organizers arranged places for everyone to take photos. There were plenty of opportunities, but the photo shoot on the spot was free. If they waited until the afternoon, they would have to pay. Some people didn't care about the money, but it was inevitable that some people were greedy. Xiaogua asked someone to count the people who took the initiative to contact him and make an appointment for the photo shoot in the afternoon. There were about 10 people, and some people were hesitating and hadn't decided. However, Xiaogua wouldn't let go of this great publicity opportunity. However, Xiaogua glanced at his phone. He had received a call from Associate Professor Jiao, saying that he had returned to China. If the cat's father returned to China, it would probably be more difficult to ask that cat for help in the future. In short, he had to seize this opportunity to gain more popularity. After Zheng Tan took an afternoon nap in the lounge, he was pulled over to prepare for the photo shoot. Just now, Xiaogua had told him that Jiao Pa was back and would come over in the afternoon. On New Year's Eve, the Jiao Pa had called and said that he would only be back in the second half of the year if he was fast. She didn't expect him to be back so soon. She heard that he had bought a 2-hour flight from Beijing to Linzhou at 1 p.m. He would arrive at Linzhou at 3 p.m. She just didn't know when the Jiao Pa would arrive at the venue. Knowing that Jiao Pa was coming, Jingtan's good mood became even better. Even his attitude towards the people who wanted to take photos with him became better. There were a lot of people taking photos in the morning, including some children. Fortunately, those children did not pull Jingtan's beard. They were quite well behaved. Hopefully, the afternoon would go smoothly as well. The competition in the morning was not ranked, but the group photo in the afternoon directly reflected who was more popular. Xiaogua had asked someone to set up the venue at noon. Now, it seemed that the shooting location was quite professional. The person in charge of taking photos was also a professional photographer in the team. This was an old man who had worked with Zheng Tan many times and was familiar with each other. At the beginning, a few young people, especially a few young men, came to take photos with Jin Ling. Jin Ling did not refuse. Now, some of the young people who were wandering outside were itchy. They quickly lined up to pay and take photos. Because of this, when the people whose goal was the cat and the people whose goal was Jin Ling were added together, there were more people in line. This was the brilliance of Xiaogua. We don't lose to cats, and we don't lose to girls. We have to grab both hands and be hard on both hands. However, everyone who came to take photos with the cat, Xiaogua asked people to tell them that the cat could not be touched, especially the head. If they touched it, they would not be responsible for being caught or bitten. As long as they listened to their arrangements, everything would be safe and sound. For many people who knew cats, they felt that cats should be touched and scratched more on their chins to get close to them. However, the people at the scene told them that this black cat was different from him. They could not explain it even if they really wanted to. However, people who had taken photos knew that this cat looked difficult to get along with and had a black face. In fact, it was quite friendly to take photos. For example, it took the initiative to cooperate and pose for photos. 20 yuan for a photo. Although the photo was not big, it would be beautifully made. Moreover, the name, Green Wings, and the name and address of the pet center were printed on the back of the photo. Xiao Guo would not give up any publicity opportunity. This was the psychology of people. Even if they were not interested in what everyone was doing, they would still want to join in the fun. Some people who only took photos with famous cats and champion cats also came to line up when they had free time. There were some props clothes on the side. People who were about to turn could go over and choose props clothes. A 6 or 7-year-old boy ran over and picked one. Then, he stood in front of the fitting mirror and looked at himself. He probably felt that he was so handsome in the clothes that he peed his pants. Yes, he really peed his pants. When Jingtan heard the people around him laughing, he looked over and found that the little kid in front of the fitting mirror was pursing his lips and crying out loud. His pants were wet, including the prop's clothes. There was a large wet urine stain. Sometimes, Jingtan felt that, in fact, the thoughts of children were quite strange. If they did not say it, you would not necessarily be able to guess what they were really thinking. There were many people taking photos. For Jingtan, this was actually not a troublesome thing. He just had to pose there and get a few kisses from a few ladies. However, the age range of these ladies was too big, from 8 years old to 68 years old. Jingtan accidentally found that his forehead had been kissed. There was also a 2 or 3-year-old child who kissed Jingtan's forehead and left a trail of saliva on Jingtan's head. No one knew what this little kid was thinking at that time. Seeing this, Charlie hurried over and wiped it with a paper towel, then a few more times with a wet towel. Seeing that Jingtan did not fly into a rage on the spot, Charlie was relieved in his heart. During this period, some people from the organizers came to watch the photo shoot, and there were also photographers. The organizers contacted Xiao Guo and asked him to bring the cats to take photos at the end of the event. The cats in the photos were all cats that had won awards. Jingtan was the only house cat that had not won an award. The other 3 house cats were the first, second, and third house cats in the house cat group. However, in terms of popularity at the venue, Jingtan was still a lot more popular than them. At around 4:00 in the afternoon, the event was coming to an end. The number of people taking photos gradually decreased, except for those who had already paid and lined up. Those who came later were all told that the event had ended. "Hey, sir, I'm sorry, but the photo shoot has ended. If you are interested, you can patronize our shop. If you have cats at home, you can also take a look at our brand. The quality is absolutely guaranteed." The people at the side of the photo area stopped the person who came over, but before he finished speaking, the people from the group behind him came over. Teacher Jiao, why are you here? Are you here to pick up the cat?" The person who came over was an old acquaintance of Xiao Guo's from the pet center. He was also one of the few people who knew that Jingtan was in the Jiao family. The person who came before saw that everyone knew each other, so he stopped talking and let Associate Professor Jiao go straight in. When Jingtan was taking photos with someone, he caught a glimpse of the Jiaopa standing on the side. However, the Jiaopa signaled him to continue with his work, so Jingtan did not go over. However, he was not in the mood to take photos. After taking the last photo, the Jiaopa walked over and lifted Jingtan up as if he was holding a child. He threw him twice in the air and said, "You've gained weight." Jingtan was speechless. As expected of a scientific researcher, Jingtan could probably be accurate to 3 decimal places with just a shake of his hand. However, after the Chinese New Year, Jingtan did not lose all his weight. The Jiaopa did not take Jingtan away. He had already heard that Jingtan would be taking photos with the winning cats on the stage during the closing ceremony. The photos would be put on the event records of the relevant organizations as a souvenir. There were fewer people at the closing ceremony than at the opening ceremony. Only some relevant organizations and the owners of the winning cats were present. Jingtan stood on the stage, where there was a staircase. The winning cats were placed on top of it. Cats were not as obedient as dogs, so they had to hurry up. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if they got impatient or started to fight. Jingtan's seat was a little closer to the middle of the back row. A long-haired big guy was squatting next to him. It was about to squeeze into the middle, but when it saw Jingtan's eyes, it unconsciously moved in the opposite direction. It seemed to feel that it was not safe enough, so it moved a little closer. The Jiaopa was amused and took out his camera to take photos. The feelings of the cat owners in the audience were similar to the feelings of the parents when their children stood on the stage to receive an award after participating in a performance or competition. The person standing next to the Jiaopa saw what the Jiaopa was doing and asked, "Your cat is up there too?" Before the Jiaopa could answer, the person continued, "My son is up there. He is the champion of the kittens category. Hee, this little guy is showing the temperament of a champion at such a young age." The Jiaopa looked in the direction that the person was pointing. There were only 3 kittens on the stage. It did not know which one was the cat that the person was talking about. Just as the Jiaopa was looking at the stage and guessing, he heard the person next to him shout towards the stage, "Huang Sheng, look over here. I am the father." The Jiaopa was speechless. There were 3 kittens over there, and one was Ginger. It was probably the little guy. The kitten called Huang Sheng did not know if it heard it. Its flat face was a little serious, but its eyes were looking around. It was indeed quite clever. After the closing ceremony, the Jiaopa took Jingtan out first. They would meet up at the hotel that Xiao Gua and the others had booked and go back to Chuhua City the next morning. The reason why the Jiaopa took Jingtan out alone was that before entering the venue, he met Fang Xiaokong outside the venue with his children and pets. Fang Mengmeng said that she wanted to take a picture with Jingtan. Fang Xiaokong did not want to interact with the people at the pet center, so he asked the Jiaopa to take Jingtan out when he was free and they could all have a meal together. While Fang Mengmeng was taking pictures of Jingtan and Dami with Fang Xiaokong's SLR camera, the Jiaopa and Fang Xiaokong were chatting on the side. "You will be able to get rid of the word vice soon after coming back, right?" "Congratulations in advance," said Fang Xiaokong. "Thank you. However, after the word vice is removed, there will be more challenges to face. There are many capable people now." The Jiaopa smiled and shook his head. "That's true. Even in famous universities in China, there are many strategic scientists." Chapter 241. They didn't chat with Fang Xiaokong and the others for too long. Jingtan and the Jiaopa returned to the hotel to meet up with Xiao Gua and the others. The next day, they returned to Chuhua City with the team. This time, Little Gua's harvest was quite bountiful. Xiao Gua, who was in a good mood, chatted with the Jiaopa and praised Jingtan to the skies. Jingtan ignored him. Since the Jiaopa had returned, Charlie didn't continue to stay with Jingtan. He took the opportunity to rest a little. Taking care of cats wasn't an easy task. Fortunately, Xiao Gua had promised to give him a raise. It was already evening when they returned to Chuhua City. When the bus passed by Chuhua University, Jingtan and the Jiaopa got off the bus. They didn't go anywhere else but went straight back to the villa complex. The Jiaopa didn't bring many things back. He only brought 2 bags and a simple outfit. Most of his luggage was checked in, so it was convenient for him to move around. He didn't need anyone's help. While they were still on the bus, the Jiaoma made a few phone calls to make dinner. It was rare that the family could have dinner together again after more than a year. The Jiao Yuan was absent-minded while eating. He kept glancing at his father's bag to see what gifts he had brought. Zheng Tan was also absent-minded while eating. He didn't care about the gifts, but he suddenly remembered that after the Jiaopa came back, he couldn't secretly surf the internet anymore. The Jiaopa was not like the Jiaoma. The Jiaopa was very meticulous. Zheng Tan thought about it. Although the Jiaopa always cleaned up his traces after surfing the internet, he couldn't be sure that it was completely cleaned up. He didn't expect the Jiaopa to come back so early. After the meal, the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo went to look at the gifts. Zheng Tan squatted beside them and listened to little Pomelo and the Jiao Yuan talking about the gifts. However, his ears were perked up as he listened to the movements in the bedroom. The Jiaopa had turned on his computer and was sitting in front of it. He was probably contacting some of his colleagues. Zheng Tan looked up. He didn't see anything strange with the Jiaopa. The Jiaopa didn't ask about the computer, which made Zheng Tan feel relieved. It's good that he didn't notice anything. I'll go to the science building first. The Jiaopa stood up and said to the Jiaoma, who was tidying up the living room. It's already so late. What are you going to do? Supervise the students? The Jiaoma joked. Many students from the Institute of Biological Sciences would stay in the lab at night. They would only go back to the dormitory after 10 o'clock. No, I need to scan some documents and send it to someone. The Jiaopa said. He didn't have any rigid rules for his students. As long as they could produce results, they could arrange their own time. Oh, right. Treat your students to a meal. There are already 5 of them now. Yes, there will be more in the future. The Jiaopa sighed. This year, 2 more students came to study under the Jiaopa. Most of the undergraduate students had already graduated and left. Many of the master's students were still in school. Of the 2 new students, one came from a place far away, and the other came from a place in Chuhua City. One was from the school, and the other was from another province. One was a boy and a girl. Because the Jiaopa wasn't around during the second round of postgraduate exams, and there were many students who applied for him, it took a long time to read the emails that the students sent to the Jiaopa before the second round of exams. However, the Jiaopa was busy at that time, so he didn't have time to read them carefully. He replied with a few sentences and asked another teacher in the institute to check the emails. Enchanting also helped to check the emails. After all, the Jiaopa didn't want to see the members of a small team having conflicts. He also believed that Enchanting's eyes weren't bad. Speaking of which, the Jiaopa hadn't seen the 2 new postgraduate students. Zheng Tan hadn't seen them either. He only heard a few words from the Jiaoma when she was on the phone. However, when the Jiaopa said, there will be more in the future, did it mean that the Jiaopa was going to start recruiting more people? In the past, he only recruited 1 person. This year, he recruited 2 people. Next year, he will recruit 3 people. At this time, Chuhua University's Institute of Biological Sciences. Although most of the teachers' offices were empty, the students' self-study rooms and laboratories were still brightly lit. There were many people inside. Of course, this didn't necessarily mean that every student here was very hardworking. In the self-study rooms, there was air conditioning, internet, and they didn't have to worry about electricity bills. What's more, some students could even find a partner in the self-study room. How comfortable was that? However, those who were strictly controlled by the instructors and had planted eyes and ears in the self-study room were not so harmonious. Generally speaking, from the outside, without looking at the images on the students' computer screens, it was a very encouraging scene. In the Jiaopa's office, Enchanting and Su Chu were chatting. At the same time, there were 2 other PhD students who had a good relationship with Su Chu. As for Xing Jing, he was now in the laboratory teaching the new students to do experiments. There was a big watermelon on the table. Some of it was left for Xing Jing and the 2 PhD students. The other 4 men were sharing it inside. They didn't stop eating the watermelon. Recently, the 2 PhD students had been too angry. It wasn't easy for them to find an opportunity to vent their anger. When they talked in the teacher's office, as long as the doors and windows were closed, no one outside could hear them. Moreover, at this time, many teachers weren't in the courtyard, so they weren't afraid of being overheard. Hey, what do you think Pimple Lu is like? If I were his father, I would have strangled him. But his father treats him like a treasure. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so arrogant all the time. Su Chu sat next to them and ate the watermelon quietly. He didn't take the initiative to talk. The 3 people in front of him were all seniors. Moreover, the 2 people who were criticizing their supervisor had nothing to do with Su Chu. It was even more inappropriate for him to interrupt. The 2 people who were complaining were Pimple Lu's PhD students. Like them, Enchanting was also a PhD student. She was a direct PhD student. When her classmates were in the third year of postgraduate studies, she directly went to the first year of postgraduate studies. Therefore, here, Exin and the two people who were complaining were in the same year. This was also the reason why Su Chu didn't interrupt. In the group meeting last Friday, Pimple Lu went up and talked nonsense for a long time. After that, there was an awkward silence. I don't know what he was thinking. He asked the PhD student to tell a joke. Tell a damn joke. Which supervisor would ask someone to tell a joke during a group meeting? If it wasn't funny, he wasn't satisfied. He looked down on people. F***ck, he said it as if he was humorous and witty. The person who was sitting in the corner took 2 big bites of the watermelon as if he was venting his anger. What's wrong with that? Some time ago, he went to listen to a report. When he came out, he didn't look too good. He just happened to see me and asked me to laugh. Laugh his ass. Another PhD student also said angrily. Just talking about this matter made him angry. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have applied for Pimple Lu's PhD. The Pimple Lu they were talking about was Lu Geta. Many students in the institute jokingly called him Pimple Lu in private. This name came out from the mouths of Professor Lu's students. The professor was in his 40s. His parents were famous people in the industry and were the kind of people who could take charge of big projects. Pimple Lu himself didn't have much ability, but under his profile on the institute's website, there were a lot of dazzling reputations, various articles with high impact factors, various big projects under his hands, and various titles. The students who applied for Pimple Lu were all deceived by these. This was because the supervisors had big projects in their hands and could happily distribute money to their students. It was also easier for them to produce results to decorate their personal files. When they graduated, they could find a good place to go. Unfortunately, his character was F***king despicable. He was F***king lying. This was what a lot of people were thinking. Everyone was fooled by that string of glory. Many of the teachers in the institute also couldn't stand Pimple Lu. They felt that this person didn't have much ability. He was nowhere to be seen all day, only took money but didn't do anything. He was a dog in the manger and didn't do anything. He hogged some positions but didn't do anything. None of the students under him produced any results, but he was still able to clinch all kinds of million-dollar projects. It couldn't be helped. His parents were too awesome and couldn't compete. This was also what Feng Xiaokong called a strategic scientist sarcastically. He only thought about how to make money from projects. As for scientific research, didn't he have the old man and woman at home? When the time came, he could just go there and put his name on it, or directly put the results under his name. If he can say a few more good things about me during graduation, I'll endure it. I'm just worried that he'll embarrass me during the graduation thesis defense. A while ago, when a master's junior was doing his thesis defense, Pimple Lu mercilessly criticized that junior in front of so many judges. At that time, my junior's face turned green. Hey, tell me, which teacher would criticize his own student like shit in front of the other teachers in the academy? I'm not afraid of being criticized. After being with him for a year, I've become a lot more thick-skinned. I'll be fine as long as he doesn't deliberately stop me from graduating. Listening to the complaints of these two seniors, Su Chu felt that his supervisor was really too kind. Exin had the same thoughts as Su Chu. Although my boss doesn't have much power in the institute and is only an associate professor, he's really capable and kind to us. Let me tell you, even if he came here and saw us eating watermelon in his office and spitting out watermelon seeds, he wouldn't scold us. As soon as Exin finished speaking, the office door opened. Originally, Exin thought it was Xingjing. Only she, Su Chu, and Xingjing had the keys to the office. She didn't expect to see her supervisor standing at the door, who was supposed to be on the other side of the ocean. Jiao Pa looked at the watermelon seeds on the floor and was silent for 3 seconds. He glanced at the people in the office and then looked at Exin meaningfully. Exin broke out in a cold sweat. The big guy Su Chu hurriedly threw the watermelon in his hand into the trash bin. He didn't even have time to wipe his mouth. He stood up and stammered, "BBB boss." The two PhD students sitting on the side didn't know Associate Professor Zhao, but when they heard Su Chu call him that, they understood. They quickly put down their crossed legs, called out, "Professor Zhao," and immediately ran away. You're back. I'll clean this place up immediately." Exin hurriedly asked Su Chu to pack up. "Don't be in such a hurry. I'll take the materials and leave." Exin watched her supervisor take out the key, open the drawer, and leave with the materials. After Zhao Pa left, Su Chu gulped and looked at Exin. "Senior, what should we do?" Exin's face was bitter. She banged her head on the table and said, "Oh no, my salary will be deducted. My perfect image in the boss's mind is ruined." In the laboratory on the third floor, Xingjing was preparing the culture medium. She suddenly realized that she forgot to take a bottle. She didn't want to go back, so she shouted, "Kuhang, help me get the sodium citrate on the table." Soon, a bottle of sodium citrate was placed next to Xingjing. "Thank you. Junior, you did well. It didn't take you long to find the materials. I'll treat you to dinner." "Professor Zhao." Xingjing lowered her head and weighed the samples. She didn't notice who was standing next to her. Now that she looked up, she saw her boss standing next to her. She was so shocked that she almost threw the bottle in her hand. She cursed in her heart, F***ck. When did the boss come back? Senior didn't tell him. Chapter 242. Exin and the others had been on tenterhooks, but they found that Associate Professor Zhao didn't say anything directly. After they came back, they did what they were supposed to do. They had a group meeting and asked Exin, Su Chu, and Xingjing to report the results of their work in the past year. Then, Kuhang and Dai Tong, who had just joined, introduced themselves. Associate Professor Zhao had an impression of Dai Tong, who was from the same school. Generally speaking, she was a good and hard-working girl. Dai Tong was going to go abroad directly, but she was delayed by many things. She applied for the postgraduate entrance examination with other students and applied for Associate Professor Zhao's position. Because she was from the same school, she knew more about the teachers in the school. It could be seen that she really wanted to achieve something. Although Kuhang went to a university in another province, he was from Chuhua. This time, he came back directly after taking the postgraduate entrance examination. Among the several people in the group, he was the only one who didn't know Associate Professor Zhao. Therefore, when Exin and the others were worried that Associate Professor Zhao would call them over to talk, he was also on tenterhooks. He was afraid that he would leave a bad impression on them. At the end of the group meeting, Associate Professor Zhao asked them when they were free to go to his house for dinner. His wife would cook for them. The several students discussed for a while and decided on a Saturday. In fact, Zhao Ma wanted to ask Zhao Pa to invite the students to dinner outside, but Zhao Pa didn't think it was necessary to eat outside. Although the house was not big, it could accommodate 5 more people. If they couldn't, they could just squeeze in. It was cheaper to eat at home, so there was no need to be polite. At 6:00 in the afternoon on Saturday, the sun was not so hot and there were many trees on the ground. At this time, many people gradually went out to eat. Not far from the eastern courtyard, a group of 5 people went to the courtyard. 3 of them were riding bicycles, and the other 2 were hitchhiking. Exin, who was leading the group, didn't have anyone on her bicycle. There were several bags of fruits hanging on her bicycle. It was better to buy something to eat at the boss's house, and the most practical thing was fruits. "Hey, senior brother, last time you said that Teacher Zhao's wife was a good person. What about the other people in Teacher Zhao's family? For example, children and the elderly?" Kuhang asked. Exin briefly told her about the 2 children from the Zhao family. "Actually, Ms. Zhao's family is very nice." "Oh, I almost forgot. Which one of you is afraid of cats?" "Teacher Zhao has a black cat called Black Charcoal at home." Kuhang and Dai Tong shook their heads. Not many people in their profession were afraid of small animals. Who knew how many white mice they had killed? Speaking of Teacher Jiao's cat, let me tell you. Su Chu had a lot to say when it came to this topic. He was the most emotional. It was all thanks to that cat that he was chosen. Hey, look ahead, Xing Jing, who was riding his bike, interrupted Su Chu and pointed in a direction. They looked at where Xing Jing was pointing and saw a black cat walking slowly under the shade of the trees on the sidewalk. That's Mr. Jiao's son, Black Charcoal, Exian said. Will it answer if I call it? Kuheng asked. Not necessarily. This cat is a bit special. Exian didn't say anything definite, but she thought to herself that it probably won't answer. Black Charcoal. Kuheng shouted. They were riding faster than walking, and they were getting closer and closer to the cat. Although Kuheng's voice was not loud, the cat could definitely hear him. Unfortunately, the cats and birds in front of him ignored Kuheng and continued to walk slowly towards the courtyard. They didn't even pause for a moment. Big brother, are you sure that cat is Miss Jiao's? Kuheng was confused. If the cat's name was correct, it might not answer you, but it would always respond, such as stopping to look around. But the cat in front of him didn't seem to hear him at all. Absolutely. The cat tag on its neck can prove it, Exian said with certainty. Zheng Tan didn't take off the cat tag when he was hanging around the campus. He had just walked around the courtyard and remembered that Jiao Mus said they would have dinner at 6:30, so he came back at this time. Of course, Zheng Tan had heard the person who called out to him. However, there were people who knew Zheng Tan when he walked around the school. After being called out so many times, Zheng Tan was too lazy to pay attention to those who were not on good terms with him, not to mention those who he had never heard of before. He was even more lazy to pay attention to them. When Exian and the others rode into the courtyard, they were already ahead of Zheng Tan. After parking the car, Exian led his junior brothers and sisters to Building B. Once again, he reminded them of the places they should pay attention to. Listen more, talk less. There are many important people in this building. If we leave a bad impression, it won't be good. Not only will we lose face for the mentors, we won't have an easy time either. When they arrived at the door, Exian didn't rush to ring the bell. She waited next to the door and made way for the card swipe area. Kuheng and the others watched the black cat walk slowly to the door. It glanced at them casually, then went to the card swipe area and jumped. Click. The iron door of the door opened. Go in, what are you waiting for? Exian pulled Kuheng and Dai Tong, who were stunned, and followed the black cat into the building. Damn! It's really the boss's cat. Kuheng sighed. Exian made a shoo gesture. When they reached the third floor, they saw that Professor Lan's door was open. They felt nervous. Fortunately, Professor Lan didn't come out until they reached the fifth floor. It was not easy to come to the boss's house. Their hearts were beating fast, and they were worried about everything. Although they were nervous at first, they gradually felt relieved when they saw that the Jiao family was really as kind as Exian said. The living room was not big. Every time there were guests, the two children would set up a small table in the Jiao Yuan's room. Zheng Tan didn't join them in the living room, but went to the room to eat with the two children. During dinner, the Jiao Pa didn't talk about the experiments of the students, nor did he ask too much. Instead, he told them about the experience of participating in the research project abroad. He also told them about the research standards and the situation of the laboratories abroad. In the outside world, although the pay was very good, the competition and pressure were also quite great. Just like what many young professors who returned to China said when they had too much to drink, it was easy to survive in China, but difficult to survive outside. This was also one of the reasons why many people returned to China to develop their career. Naturally, they wanted to repay their alma mater and country. Of course, the country did hire some really capable people with high salaries, and also created good conditions for them to develop. However, not everyone could be so capable. Since they had chosen this path, they had to use the knowledge they learned to pave the way for themselves. Under the pressure of survival, many things were gradually drifting away from their original intention. Why did all those who studied this industry want to go abroad? Even if they went out for a stroll, they would still be able to make their records look better. Nowadays, the competition for jobs in the country was gradually increasing. Many colleges and universities had added a overseas experience when hiring teachers. It was not easy to get a job title or snatch a project. The most obvious point was that there were more and more young professors in China, but the quality of their jobs was decreasing sharply. Although it was unpleasant to hear, it was the truth. Another example was the professional title evaluation. It had gradually become a power exchange and money exchange. It had even become a game to compete for research funding. Every year, during the professional title evaluation season, there were always complaints from people who didn't get a senior title because of the research funding. Therefore, it was not a simple thing to walk down this path, climb up, and adapt to the rules here. Many people would only understand this when they reached that step. The Jiao said a lot of things selectively. He was afraid that the students would lose their enthusiasm if he said too much. The Jiao also asked a few of the students about their summer vacation plans. In fact, many graduate students did not have a summer vacation. Even if the school's website said that they had a summer vacation, everyone knew that summer vacation basically did not exist. This was especially true for schools like Tsinghua University and Exion's majors. The Jiao was very nice to his students. If the students wanted to go home, they just had to write a leave request and tell them the specific time. After all, the students were at school, so he had to be responsible for them. Zheng Tan was in the room listening to the conversation in the living room. Zheng Tan was not interested in the things they were talking about. However, after the meal, the conversation between the teacher and students aroused Zheng Tan's curiosity. Not only Zheng Tan, but Zhao Yuan and little Pomelo also heard it. The Jiao would go out with the group of students who were going to do field internships during the summer vacation. Every year, the Faculty of Biological Sciences of Tsinghua University would be brought out to do field internships during the summer vacation of the second semester. Before little Pomelo came to the Jiao family, Zhao Yuan was still young. At that time, the Jiao brought the students to the field internship and took Zhao Yuan with him. Zhao Yuan had always been thinking about when he could go out again. He had been waiting until now. Now that he heard that the Jiao was going to the field internship again, his heart began to itch. He was thinking about what to bring. After Exion and the others left, Zhao Yuan could not wait to ask the Jiao if the Jiao would bring them out to play during the summer vacation. The Jiao only replied with one sentence: "It depends on your performance." The so-called performance, Zhao Yuan and little Pomelo knew in their hearts, probably depended on the results of the final exams. Even if they could not get into the top few, they could not do too badly. Therefore, the few magazines with sexy covers and thick novels with yellow covers that were under Zhao Yuan's bed disappeared. Zheng Tan wanted to take advantage of the fact that there was no one at home and he could not go online to look for them. However, he did not find anything. Although Zhao Yuan was a child with all kinds of restlessness of adolescence, if he really decided to do something well, he would definitely treat it seriously and eliminate all sources of interference. If Zheng Tan wanted to look at those magazines and novels, he would have to wait until Zhao Yuan finished his exams. Zheng Tan was indeed very curious about the field internship, but unfortunately, Zhao Yuan and little Pomelo were busy preparing for the final exams and did not talk about other topics. Zheng Tan could only eavesdrop at night from the corner of the master bedroom to get some information. The Jiao was not the teacher leading the team this time. He just wanted to take the opportunity to bring his family out for a walk. After all, Tsinghua was very hot during the summer vacation, and the children could not do much at home, so it was better to take them out to have some fun. Although it would definitely be very tiring to go on an internship, this was one of the reasons why the Jiao wanted the two children to go. They had to train more and increase their knowledge. The field internship organized by the academy was from mid-July to the end of July. Counting the time on the way back, it would last about 2 weeks. There were a few buses booked by the academy. Since the Jiao wanted to bring his family and a cat along, he did not take the bus with the others. He drove his own car and followed along. There were also other teachers from the school who drove their own cars. After all, there were some people from other schools in the team. The teachers from the school had to be careful, so they would not be accused of being greedy. Chapter 243. In the back seat of the car, Jingtan sat with the two kids, listening to Zhao Yuan telling little Pomelo about the time he went to the field practice base with Zhao Pa. Zhao Yuan did well in the final exam, so he spoke with confidence. The tense atmosphere before the exam was finally gone. Zhao Yuan was still young at that time. Even if he saw a lot of things, he might not be able to remember them clearly. After all, his ability to accept things was limited at that time, so he didn't know much. He only thought about running around and having fun. What connected his memories were a set of photos taken at that time and a few specimens that he collected under Zhao Pa's guidance. There were plants and insects among the specimens, but they were inconvenient to carry around, so they were all left at home. Zhao Yuan only had a photo album with him. Just this photo album alone was enough to keep Zhao Yuan's mouth shut. It took about 7 hours to drive from Chuhua City to the field practice base, so Zhao Pa and Zhao Ma took turns to drive. Otherwise, they would be too tired. The group of people took a short break midway to let the students go to the toilet or something. As for those who were carsick, their faces were pale. Fortunately, the teachers leading the group were experienced. Other than plastic bags, they also prepared some medicine. When Zheng Tan woke up, he looked out of the car window and saw that there were many mountains around. Zhao Yuan and little Pomelo were looking at a map next to him. They also had a small flashlight in their hands. Sometimes, when they were in a cave, he would turn on the flashlight just to satisfy his craving. This place was very close to the field practice base that Zhao Pa mentioned. The purpose of the so-called field internship was to bring the freshmen out to see and get closer to nature. The freshman courses included botany and zoology, and some majors even involved ecology. The purpose of the field internship was to let them experience it firsthand and identify some plants and animals. Of course, it wasn't just for fun. The students who participated in the field internship had to write a report after the internship. For Zhao Yuan and little Pomelo, this was basically their summer vacation. It was the same for Zheng Tan. He strolled around the campus of Chuhua University. Although the campus was very green and occupied a large area among the universities in the country, it was still a small place. Zheng Tan also had the experience of wandering outside, but the place he went to at that time was not so mountainous. The feeling of mountains and plains were always different. The feeling of wandering and vacationing were also poles apart. At around 3:00 in the afternoon, they arrived at their destination. The field practice base of Chuhua University was built on a mountain. Zheng Tan noticed that many places on the mountain were well built. The roads and the planned houses all gave off a modern mountain city vibe. It was not like the kind of life that many people imagined. Of course, this was only the scenery on a small part of the mountain. Looking from afar, one could see the continuous mountain peaks. During July and August, the temperature in Chuhua City could soar to more than 40 degrees. If one were to break an egg on the road, it would be cooked very quickly. However, in the field practice base, when one opened the car window, one could clearly feel that the temperature was a few degrees lower than in Chuhua City. Before they came, they heard that there was no electric fan installed in the field practice base. Some of the students were worried that they would be cooked. After experiencing the summer in Chuhua City, they could not help but worry when they heard that there was no electric fan or air conditioning. However, when these students came out of the bus and walked into the dormitory arranged for them in the field practice base, they were immediately relieved. Before they came, they had already done the statistics, so they had already been allocated the rooms. The Zhao family had 4 people in a small single room, which was prepared for some of the teachers who led the team. There were 4 beds in each room, and the Zhao family directly occupied one of the rooms. This way, it was more convenient for Zheng Tan to move around. He did not have to stay in the bag all the time. The room had already been cleaned, so it was still quite clean. After all, it was the teacher's room. As for the students' room, the conditions were not as good as the teacher's room. The students had bunk beds, 4 to 8 beds. They also had a separate bathroom. Even if it was not as good as the teacher's room, the conditions were still passable. After installing the mosquito net, Jiao Ma laid out the bed sheets that she brought. The 4 of them took a shower and had a good afternoon's sleep. After eating dinner in the field practice base's cafeteria, the Jiao Pa brought the children to the conference hall to listen to a lecture. The main purpose of the evening meeting was to mobilize the students. It was to talk about the various things that they had to pay attention to during the internship, emphasize on organizational discipline, and conduct a simple training for the students. Before they came, the students had already learned about the internship. Although there were still many things that they did not understand, as long as they followed the teachers, everything would be simple. The teachers would usually bring along a first aid kit in case of emergencies. The children nowadays were very precious, and if anything happened to them, the teachers would not be able to bear the consequences. Jing Tan was also brought into the conference hall. The Jiao Pa hoped that everyone would listen carefully in case anything went wrong. After all, there were many mountains around, and this place was a nature reserve. It was hard to say what they would encounter in the summer. There would definitely be many snakes, insects, rats, and ants. Jing Tan was nestled in the bag, and the Jiao family were sitting at the side. No one would notice Jing Tan in the bag. Jing Tan did not look around openly either. After listening to the lecture for a while, he felt drowsy. Along with the teachers and students of Tsinghua University, there were also people from other schools. They did not have an internship base here, so every year, they would come along with the people from Tsinghua University. At night, in this unfamiliar place, Jing Tan did not feel uncomfortable sleeping. The room was filled with the scent of familiar people. He lay on little Pomelo's bed. He slept a lot during the day, so he was in good spirits at night. This place was very quiet, and if he listened carefully, he could hear the sounds of some animals that he could not normally hear. Just like what the person in the report said today, this was a city surrounded by nature. Perhaps many people in the city felt that being close to nature was a very good experience. The air was fresh, and it was quiet enough. But in reality, if those people were really allowed to come here, they might not be able to bear it. When they first arrived here today, a few boys wandered around the area. They did not go out of the range of the base. When they came back, they had an empty drink bottle with a big black insect in it. Jing Tan had never seen it before. They asked a few students, but none of them knew what it was. They only said that it might be some kind of insect of the order Coleoptera, so they took it to the teachers who specialized in insects. A few of the girls almost screamed when they saw it. They probably would not develop their studies in insects in the future. Therefore, it was clear that not everyone could live in the mountains. The next day, the teachers were not in a hurry to bring the students out. Instead, they brought the students to the Lingshan City Museum of Nature, which was not far from the internship base. Jing Tan stayed in the backpack and was brought in by the Jiao Pa. Logically speaking, they were not allowed to casually bring things in. But now that they were a group of university students and teachers, the guards at the entrance and the management staff of the museum did not really care. They even chatted with a few of the teachers for a while. It seemed like they knew each other. The person in charge of the museum only paid attention to not let the students cause any damage. Jing Tan stayed in the backpack and peeked out through the gap of the zipper. The backpack had been modified by the Jiao Ma, and there was an additional gauze section. If people outside did not look carefully, it would be difficult to see what was in the backpack. However, Jing Tan could see outside through the gauze and did not have to worry about being too stuffy in the backpack. Jing Tan was not very interested in the plant specimens, and the students were obviously the same. That was until they came to the animal exhibition area. Most of the animals seen in zoos could be seen here, and there were many that had not been seen in zoos. However, the animals here were just specimens. There was no life in them, and there was no light in their eyes. Looking at the lifelike but lifeless specimens, Jing Tan suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He did not know what the animals were thinking when they were made into specimens. Perhaps they were already dead before they were made into specimens. A few teachers and museum staff were explaining to the students over there. The main types of animal specimens are soaked specimens, peeled specimens, skeletal specimens, dried specimens, and slide specimens. Immersion specimens were specimens that were preserved in immersion liquid in their original form after the animal was killed and not dissected. Peeled specimens are usually used for vertebrates, such as birds and mammals. You need to peel off the skin of these vertebrates, remove the muscles on the skin, apply preservatives on the inner surface of the skin, fill in the prosthesis, install artificial eyes, and suture and reshape the specimen. Zheng Tan looked out through the gauze. After the teacher in front finished his explanation, he let another person continue. The person behind him was responsible for making specimens. The person in charge of the explanation was a zoology teacher from the Institute of Biological Sciences of Tsinghua University. There were also a few botany teachers. Some of the samples involved in their research project came from some areas in Tongshan City, so they were naturally familiar with the people here. The specimen maker led the students to a corner where some tools were placed. I only took them out for you to see because you are here. I wouldn't even give them to other people. The specimen maker pointed out the tools to the students as if he was presenting a treasure. At the same time, he talked about the industry of specimen making. To put it in perspective, the standard of living of people nowadays is better. They have pets and have built deep relationships with them. However, when the pet dies, the owner will feel great pain. However, if the dead pet is made into a real specimen with a complete structure, not only can it be entrusted to the owner's grief, it can also be preserved for a longer time. *T. If Zheng Tan could speak, he probably would have cursed out loud to refute this. Looking at the Jiao family next to him, Jiao Yuan had a look of disdain on his face. Little Pomelo also frowned, obviously disagreeing with the man's words. Because of the angle, Zheng Tan could not see the expressions of Jiao Ma and Jiao Pa. The specimen maker continued to explain the use of the scalpel, tweezers, scissors, steel wire pliers, files, hammers, saws, nails, lead wires, needles, and other tools. Many of the chemical agents were not very safe, so he did not take them out. He only mentioned some of them when he was explaining to the students, such as arsenic dioxide, arsenic, potassium aluminum sulfate, alum, phenol, lysol, etc. Most of the specimens are made using the method of partial prosthesis and partial filling. The general process is skinning, preserving, prosthesis making, filling, ocular prosthesis making, suturing, and the whole process of finishing. When skinning, the abdomen is cut open and the whole body is taken out in pieces. Listening to the man's words, Zheng Tan stayed in the backpack and felt a chill run down his spine. From what the specimen maker said, he felt that this profession was a beautiful profession that could bring the dead back to life. He loved this profession. In Zheng Tan's eyes, the specimen maker was one of his natural enemies. Chapter 244. On the third day of their arrival at the internship base, the students who had been divided into groups left the internship base with their respective teachers. The 4 members of the Jiao family were with one of the groups. The 2 teachers in that group had a good relationship with Jiao Pa. They talked about their experiences as teachers when they were walking in the forest. When they went out into the wild, everyone wore long sleeves, long pants, and hiking shoes. They also wore sun hats. There were many insects and mosquitoes in the forest on the mountain. Although it was daytime, they knew how powerful the mosquitoes were after entering the forest. That was why the students were carrying toilet water, essential oil, and some anti-mosquito agents in their bags. Zheng Tan didn't think much of it. First, he was wearing a cat skin as a layer of protection. Second, he was used to it. He was always in the forest, so he didn't think it was a big deal. Wearing something else would be a hindrance. The teacher in charge introduced some plants to the students as they walked. If they felt it was valuable as a specimen, they would collect it and make it into a specimen at home. As for the plants that were common in Tsinghua City, they didn't want to waste their time. On the first day of their field practice, the teacher in charge didn't plan to bring the students to a remote place. Instead, they walked along the winding road. The cement road was very smooth, and it was probably mainly used for tourism. After the number of people had decreased, they didn't see many cars along the way. On the contrary, they could see one or two brave crabs in the middle of the road. People were like mantises trying to stop a chariot, but these crabs were trying to stop a chariot with their bare arms. Although there were no cars, there were many people. Jiao Yuan followed the students. Every time they saw a crab on the road, they would rush up with a bottle. Jiao Yuan didn't need to reach out his hand to catch the crabs. One of the students was chasing the crabs from behind. Jiao Yuan held the bottle in front of the crabs and waited for the crabs to climb into the bottle. However, the smarter and faster crabs were not so easy to catch. Crabs crawled faster than prawns, and some of them slipped down the slope and into the stream below. A crab crawled towards Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan raised his claws and quickly flipped it towards Little Pomelo. Little Pomelo was prepared. She was not afraid of the crab. She took the bottle and covered it. The other students naturally came over to help. They would not give up this opportunity to curry favor with the teacher's child. If they helped the teacher's child, perhaps the teacher would let them off during the final exam and not fail. Along the way, the group caught a lot of crabs. Except for a few people who used their own bottles to keep one or two crabs, the rest of the crabs were put into a bag first. After walking for a while, the group deviated from the main road and climbed up the mountain. There was still some life in the surrounding area. Sometimes, they could see one or two villagers living on the mountain. However, unlike the well-built houses near the base, these villagers' houses were very simple and tile-roofed. Along the way, the teachers in charge not only told the students about the plants they saw, but also about the insects they knew. The Jiaopa also said something to the two children. "Hey, there's a cat," the Jiao Yuan said, pointing at a place. Zheng Tan looked in the direction the Jiao Yuan was pointing. There was indeed a cat running there, and it quickly left the group's sight and hid in the bushes. By the time the slower people looked over, the cat had already disappeared. The cat was probably scared away by the commotion caused by the group of people here. "That should be a stray cat," one of the teachers in charge said. "There are many stray cats here. Some of them are domestic cats that returned to the wild. After a few generations of breeding, they became stray cats." After saying that, the teacher still felt uneasy. He reminded the students, "You have to be careful when you see stray cats on the mountain. These cats are different from your domestic pets. They are grumpy, but they haven't been vaccinated. Who knows how many germs they carry when they run around the mountain. It's better to stay away from them in the future." The group looked at Associate Professor Jiao's cat, which didn't use a leash and had been following them without causing any trouble. Then they thought about the cat they saw just now, which disappeared without a trace. It was indeed the difference between a domestic cat and a stray cat. Cats are very wild, and they have a strong survival ability. When they return to the wild, many of them survive. It's a pity that the birds are missing. 2 years ago, people from the Bird Protection Association came to catch the cats, and not long after, cat lovers' organizations came to denounce them. "Sigh," another teacher said. Zheng Tan sighed in his heart. Sure enough, cat lovers and bird lovers' organizations don't get along well. Probably feeling that this topic was not a good one for the students, and it could easily cause conflict, the teacher leading the team did not continue. He changed the topic and said, "Do you think we might find an albino animal this time?" "Heh, in your dreams. Albino animals are not that easy to find. Even the expedition team can't guarantee that they will encounter them every time. Many of them are found by chance. The probability is too low," another teacher said with a smile. "You said it was a chance event. No one can say for sure when we will meet one. It might even be an albino animal. Dream on. If we really meet an albino animal, don't talk about the overwhelming reports. Even the leaders in our institute will tremble. Unfortunately, those are only according to the data. Although there have been expedition teams that have seen red-haired bats and the like, and last year, someone in a nearby village said that they saw red-haired wild boars, there is no convincing evidence. Those overseas people don't even acknowledge the existence of albino species. In the authoritative international magazines, they can only say that no red-haired mammal has been found so far. Even if we catch a red-haired rat, it will be a major event and big news in the world. Therefore, the so-called albino animals were only rumors and legends. Jiao Pa thought of something and laughed. In the past, people joked that if we really found an albino animal in its natural state, it could only be found in the area of Tangshan City. Albino animals could also be obtained after a long period of careful artificial breeding and protection. For example, the commonly used white mice in the laboratory. Artificial mutation and breeding could indeed create a lot of things, but the albino animals in their natural state had more research value. People in the circle who studied albino animals knew the research value of albino and albino animals, especially the albino animals. The last few sentences were whispered. Only the two lead teachers and Jiao Pa could hear them. The students who were resting under the shade of a tree not far away did not pay attention to them. Zheng Tan perked up his ears to listen to their conversation. According to the two lead teachers, many albino animals had been found in Tangshan City. There were also many mammals, such as albino squirrels, foxes, bears, and so on. Some people once thought that the emergence of albino animals was due to the development of human beings and the expansion of their range of activities, which led to the gradual reduction of the animal's living space, population reduction, and degeneration due to inbreeding. However, some people also felt that since albino animals existed in Tangshan City since ancient times, and there were more of them than other places in the world, it was unlikely that it was a pure albino phenomenon. There might be other unknown reasons. When it came to unknown reasons, Zheng Tan's imagination ran wild. For example, mysterious organizations, aliens, and so on. However, it was just a thought. If someone really said that it was because of aliens, Zheng Tan would not necessarily believe it. Just like what Jiao Pa said, there were many more unknown species on Earth than known species. Although human knowledge was improving, there were still many unsolved mysteries. Perhaps, when civilization developed to a certain extent, these mysteries could be solved. He just did not know if the mystery of cats with a human heart could be solved. Zheng Tan was just thinking that if the albino animals were really found, would they be immediately made into specimens? Later, he realized that if they were really caught, they would definitely be treated as an extremely precious species. It was true that the rarer something was, the more valuable it was. Moreover, to these researchers, the value of the albino animals was incomparable to other animals. Zheng Tan had killed white mice before, but he had not encountered any red mice. Zheng Tan was also looking forward to meeting an albino animal. That way, the trip would not be in vain. On the first day of the field trip, when the students returned, they were so tired that they went into their rooms and lay on their beds. They were not as energetic as they were 2 days ago. It was said that another group encountered a snake that fell directly from a tree and almost hit a student below. Until now, the student was still in shock. It was also said that another group of students was hit on the back of the hand by an unknown species of mosquito-sized insect. Although the insect quickly fell to the ground and crawled away, the back of the student's hand was quickly swollen like a pig's trotter. It was said that the student was unable to leave the base for a few days. However, Zheng Tan felt that the day was not too bad. After dinner, he was still in the mood to go out for a walk. The two children took a bath and went to sleep. Under the gaze of Jiao Pa, Zheng Tan jumped out of the window, climbed over the wall of the base, and walked on the cement road outside. The surrounding area was surrounded by 2- or 3-story villas. It seemed that many of the people living in the area had some wealth. Looking into the distance, all he could see were mountains of varying heights. Lights could only be seen in villages and towns where people lived, but they were only in small patches. Compared to the forest under the night sky, the bright areas were pitifully small. As he walked along the mountain, Zheng Tan suddenly smelled a faint scent. It was difficult to smell it with a human sense of smell. Zheng Tan could only smell it because of his cat's nose. This scent made Zheng Tan feel very uncomfortable. It reminded him of the specimens he saw in the museum. He knew that many people liked to decorate their homes with wild animal specimens, such as deer heads. There were many such examples in this place, but Zheng Tan felt that something was wrong. Although he was curious, he knew that he was not familiar with this place. It also made him feel a chill. He could not take the risk, so Jingtan decided to leave. But before Jingtan could walk far, he saw a shadow flash by. In the night, the shadow quietly approached the house that Jingtan was looking at. When it approached, the guy even glanced in Jingtan's direction. Looking into those eyes, Jingtan felt that all the hair on his body stood up. That was a guy who had survived in the natural survival of the fittest. It was not a pet that stayed at home all day and did not have to worry about food. Chapter 245. In a small courtyard not far from Jingtan's house, there was a cat. It was an ordinary house cat. When Jingtan walked over, he heard the house cat meowing a few times. It sounded a little arrogant. Perhaps to it, this place was its territory. When it saw Jingtan, it meowed a few times, which proved that it was not a coward. But now, the house cat was already curled up in a corner. Its eyes were wide open, looking at the strange cat under the night sky. Maybe it knew who it was, or maybe it didn't, but there was no doubt that its eyes were full of fear and cowardice. It was as if it was facing a creature at the top of the food chain in nature. This feeling was very strange. If Jingtan wasn't in a special situation, he would probably be curled up in a corner like the house cat, not daring to make a sound or even move. Could that cat have the same origin as the Monseigneur? Because of the Monseigneur's example, Jingtan first thought of this situation. After all, there were some bases around here, such as the internship base of Tsinghua University. There were also some people who always stayed here to do research. Who knew what kind of strange research they would do? Jingtan couldn't see what the color of the cat's fur was under the night sky. The cat just looked at Jingtan for a while, then continued to walk forward. It was very fast and very light. If it wasn't for the vigilance and intuition that Jingtan had trained over the past few years, he might not have noticed it. In the courtyard of the house that emitted the smell that made Jingtan very unhappy, there were only some low bushes and grass. There was still some distance between the trees. Although there were only 2 stories, the height of each story was higher than the ordinary houses that Jingtan had seen in Tsinghua City. So, in terms of height, the 2-story house here was comparable to the 3-story houses in Tsinghua City. Jingtan stood quietly to the side, watching the cat jump directly towards the wall after running over. He didn't know where the cat hooked its claws on the wall, or if it didn't use anything to climb the wall. Jingtan only saw a shadow flash on the wall, and the cat was already in front of an open window on the 2nd floor. It must have done a lot of similar climbing exercises. The cat stood on the windowsill and looked inside. Its ears were alert and its tail moved. Then, it jumped in. What did it want to do? Jingtan was very curious. What made Jingtan even more curious was the cat's origin. In the past 3 years, Jingtan had seen a lot of cats and other animals. He also knew that among animals, even if they were of the same species, there were differences in intelligence. And this cat made Jingtan feel that it wasn't as simple as its attack power being extremely threatening. The cat that was hiding in the corner of the courtyard was no longer there. It probably went into the house to find a sense of security. Jingtan originally planned to walk around casually and then return to the base, but now he was a little hesitant. People here didn't come out much at night. The base was more lively, but here, it was really quiet. Only the sound of the programs on the TV in the house could make people feel a little livelier. The Jiaopa said that Shao Mountain was full of mysteries, but Jingtan didn't feel what was so special about it. As for the rumors and legends, Jingtan only listened to them as stories. But now, although he didn't feel anything magical, he finally felt something different. Curiosity was a habit that no cat could get rid of. When Jingtan inherited the cat's body, he might have also inherited this habit. Jingtan was still thinking about this inexplicable strange feeling. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he had already walked a few steps towards the house. Smelling the faint smell in the air, Jingtan shook his fur and treated it as shaking off the goosebumps. In front of the courtyard of the house, Jingtan squeezed in through the gap of the gate. He stopped at the place where the cat climbed the wall and sniffed. It was an unfamiliar cat smell. In addition, there was the smell of the specimen's medicine, the smell of pesticides, and the tangled smell that made Jingtan feel uncomfortable. The wall wasn't smooth, so Jingtan climbed up. Even though Jingtan had always felt good about himself, he had to admit that his ability to climb walls was not as good as the cat's. He wasn't as fast as the cat, and he wasn't as agile as the cat. After climbing to the window sill on the second floor with great difficulty, Jingtan didn't go in immediately. Instead, he stayed on the window sill and observed the movements inside. It was very quiet, as if there was no living thing inside. If he hadn't seen the cat jump in with his own eyes, and if he hadn't smelled the smell coming from the room, Jingtan would definitely have thought that there was nothing living in the room. Even if there was no living thing, it didn't mean that there were no other animals. The door of the room was closed, and there was no lighting inside. Looking at the sky and then looking at the room, he felt that the sky was actually brighter than the room. The night wind blew into the room, and the airflow circled around the room, bringing out the complicated smell inside. The window screen by the window swayed with the airflow, and the dancing white window screen added a strange feeling in this situation. When the window screen was lifted up by the airflow again, Jingtan saw the situation in the room. There were many animals in the room. But none of them were alive, except for the cat that Jingtan had seen just now, who was quietly sitting on a table. This was a room for animal specimens, and there were many animal specimens in it. Of course, after all, the space was limited, and it couldn't be compared to the variety and large animals in the museum. Most of the animal specimens in the room were small in size, such as some birds, small squirrels, rabbits, and so on. The animal specimens in the museum were basically donated by zoos, forestry, and other departments, such as some rare animals that died of diseases. Jingtan learned this later. According to Jiao Pa, there were hundreds of animals frozen in the freezer used to store animal carcasses in the Tongshan Museum of Natural History. The museum's taxidermists were going to thaw them one by one and make them into specimens. However, for many private collectors, they were more inclined to make specimens of healthy animals. Some taxidermists didn't like dead animals, because some of the animals' carcasses had a higher degree of decomposition, and they couldn't stand the smell when the fur was peeled off, so they preferred to kill fresh animals. As for the animal specimens in this room, Jingtan's intuition told him that they had been killed in a healthy state. Perhaps it was because the people who made these specimens were not very professional, and compared to the specimens in the museum, these specimens were much worse in terms of production and preservation. Now, Jingtan even smelled the smell of rotten fur. He estimated that in 1 or 2 years, some of the specimens in here would be wasted. Maybe the owner didn't care about this. If the specimens were rotten or wasted, they could just make new ones, and throw away the old ones to make room for the new ones. Jingtan didn't want to look at the animals that had been made into specimens. He mainly focused on the cat sitting on the table in the room. Opposite the cat, there was a cat specimen. The cat that had been made into a specimen was not an ordinary domestic cat, but its size was similar to that of an ordinary cat. Jingtan had been to exhibitions, so he naturally recognized several valuable cat breeds, but this cat was not one of the valuable breeds in his memory. Could it be a wild cat that lived in the mountains? Just like what the students had said when they were talking about it, in the wild, as long as there was no reproductive isolation, could anything happen? In layman's terms, it was hybridization. For example, for wolf dogs and super cats, in addition to artificial selection, natural selection was always happening, especially in a place like Pyrolite Mountain, which was rich in species. Since it could be made into a specimen, it should be different from a domestic cat, but Zhang Zian didn't know how different it was. Jingtan stood on the windowsill and couldn't see very clearly, so he couldn't observe it in detail. However, it seemed that the cat specimen, whether in terms of size or appearance, should not be related, right? The cat just sat there quietly. When Jingtan turned to the windowsill, its ears moved, and it glanced at the windowsill, then stared at the specimen cat again. Face to face, eye to eye, the distance between the two was about 10 centimeters. Jingtan had a ridiculous feeling. He felt that the cat was not sad about anything. It was more like it was deep in thought, like a thinker. Jingtan knew that his idea was ridiculous, but on second thought, other people in his circle probably felt the same way when they looked at him. They felt that it was unacceptable that such a creature that was supposed to have low intelligence suddenly became smart. Jing Tan, like most people, had underestimated the intelligent species on this planet. Maybe they didn't have the intelligence of humans, but they weren't as low as people thought. The cat just sat there and looked at the specimen for about half an hour, then left. When it left, it glanced at Jing Tan, and seemed to be surprised by Jing Tan. After all, the other cats around it shrank to the side as soon as they saw it. After the cat left, Jing Tan ran into the room and stared at the cat specimen, but he always felt that looking at the specimen gave him a chill down his spine, so he roughly glanced at it. After walking around the room, Jing Tan left and returned to the base. For the next 2 days, Jing Tan went to the wilderness with the practice team during the day, and went out for a walk at night. Every day at this time, Jing Tan would see the cat here, and every day the cat would do the same thing. Jing Tan couldn't know what it was thinking. That day, at 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, the practice team came back one by one. After eating in the cafeteria, Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo went to find the students to deal with the crabs they caught in the mountain stream when they came back today. The crabs they caught were all in a bag, so when they came back in the afternoon, they found that the crabs in the bag had almost all killed each other. There were also a few empty shells that had been eaten by their own kind. Jing Tan didn't go with them. When it was about time, he planned to go out for a walk. Today, the cat should be there on time, right? Unexpectedly, before Jing Tan lifted his foot to step out of the window, he heard the sound of a fire engine. Jing Tan listened to the direction of the fire engine, and it seemed to be in the direction where he walked every day. When he arrived in front of the house, Jing Tan found that the house, which was fine yesterday, was now on fire. The fire happened to be in the room where the specimen was displayed. When the fire engine arrived, the fire had already spread, but it was quickly controlled. The surrounding residents, who were usually nowhere to be seen at this time, came out to gather around and talk. Chapter 246. After Jing Tan returned to the base, he spent the whole night thinking about the cat. According to the onlookers, the owner of the house would open the windows for ventilation during the day and lock the windows at night. After all, there were so many unstandardized specimens in the house. Not only would the smell be heavy if the door was closed for too long, many of the gases were harmful. When Jing Tan climbed over the windowsill, he also observed that the owner of the house's window was not the kind that could be smashed easily. Jiao Pa and the others also said that wild cats in the mountains were usually active in the early morning and evening. That was why the cat chose to sneak past the owner's closed window at night. Since it did not come out during the day, it only had the opportunity to do so now. People had all kinds of guesses, but no one said anything about the cat. No one knew what had happened in the house. Jing Tan's intuition told him that it had something to do with the cat, but he did not know how the cat did it. In theory, many wild animals were afraid of fire. Was the cat not afraid? Jing Tan could not figure it out. The next day, Jing Tan went out with the trainee team as usual. Several people in the team were also discussing the fire that had happened yesterday. In the end, it was determined to be an accident. There were a lot of reasons that sounded plausible, but Jing Tan was skeptical. This accident was too much of a coincidence. Jing Tan did not understand. Halfway through the journey, he smelled a familiar scent. He looked around and saw that all he could see was trees and grass. Even if there were small animals hiding in there, as long as they did not move, the people here would not be able to find them. The sun was high up in the sky, and they had not entered the real wild area. There were no wild mammals, not even a mouse. However, Jing Tan identified the scent in the air again. It was indeed the cat. Logically speaking, with the cat's survival skills, it should not have been so close to the trainee team. The people around did not have any strange reactions. They walked past the place and gradually went away. After walking for a short distance, the lead teacher asked everyone to stop and rest for a while. Jing Tan did not stay there. He ran back. Black charcoal, don't run around, Jiao Ma said. It's probably going to poop, right? Jiao Yuan said. The people around them suddenly understood, and they didn't pay much attention to it, including the Jiao family. However, the Jiaopa frowned and looked in the direction where Jingtan had left. Even if he wanted to take a dump, he didn't have to run back. What did this guy find? Jingtan ran back to the place and followed the smell. Even if Jingtan purposely lightened his footsteps, there were too many weeds around. He would make a slight rustling sound as he walked, and animals with sensitive hearing should be able to detect it. Jingtan slowly walked over, his ears perked up as he paid attention to his surroundings. In the wilderness, he didn't dare to be careless. It was better to be safe than sorry. The direction of the wind had changed, and there was a hint of blood in the air. As Jingtan approached, a low warning roar came from behind the bushes. It was the cat, but Jingtan didn't know what had happened to it. The warning roar was warning Jingtan that if he continued to walk forward, he would not be polite. Jingtan stopped and looked at his feet. He picked up a small piece of soil and threw it in that direction. The cat was shocked, and the warning roar became louder. Jingtan had good hearing. When the small piece of dirt hit the ground, he could even hear the sound of iron chains. On the night they arrived at the base, during the meeting in the conference hall, the people on the stage told everyone that there might be some traps on the mountain that had not been removed, such as iron clamps. They also asked everyone to be careful and try not to walk into the dense weeds. It was said that something had happened before. Although Jingtan knew that the cat was trapped by a trap, he was still vigilant. He changed his direction and walked closer. As he approached, he also paid attention to the cat's movements. Soon, Jingtan saw the situation there. There was a small iron clamp on the cat's leg. The trap was not set very cleverly. He could also see a not too thick iron chain wrapped around a tree. It was not like the ones that were nailed to the ground that Jingtan had seen before. The grass in this small area was not thick. The cat was dragging the iron clamp and hiding in the grass. Due to the length of the iron chain, it could only hide half of its body in the grass. In terms of hiding, the cat was good. However, because of the trap, its conspicuous color was exposed. Jingtan observed the cat from a place not far away. It was a cat with red stripes. The patterns on its body were similar to Depang's dragonly, but the cat's fur was thicker and its body was bigger. When Jingtan saw the cat, the first thing he thought of was the red animal that the teachers in the Jiaopa had talked about. However, Jingtan was not sure. After all, there were too many strange species in this place. It might be a special breed of cat. Jingtan knew that he had good luck after becoming a cat, but only occasionally. He was not sure if he would really meet the red animal that the teachers in the Jiaopa had talked about. However, Jingtan thought that the cat's IQ should be good yesterday, but now he was doubting it. This was a clumsy trap that was set up by children in the mountains. How did this battle-hardened cat fall into it? The iron clamp on the cat's hind leg was very new and not too big. According to what Jingtan had heard in the past few days, this was a toy that children used to try to catch rabbits and weasels. The real hunters in the mountains would not only use this kind of toy. Besides, many of the villagers in the surrounding area had been informed that traps were not allowed in certain areas. In the past, the big iron clamp that almost broke the cat's leg was set up by the hunters. Observing the cat again, Jingtan was distracted by its red fur just now. Only now did he notice that half of the cat's whiskers were curled. Judging from Jingtan's personal experience, it probably had something to do with the fire last night. Otherwise, how could half of the cat's whiskers be burned like this? Jingtan speculated that the cat's whiskers had never been burned before, so when it was burned, its perception was a little weaker. Due to the sudden burn, it was not used to it, so when it passed by here, it fell into the gutter. Anyway, it was true that the cat was clamped. The golden cat stared at Jingtan. Every time Jingtan took a step towards it, it would roar a few times. Perhaps because it was clamped, it did not trust anyone and was wary of everyone. It was not like the cold and distant attitude it had when it saw Jingtan a few days ago. Looking at the iron clamp on the cat's leg, although it was not big, it was very good quality. Sometimes, too good quality things could be troublesome. Jingtan wanted to try to break the clamp, but when he approached, before he could lift his paw, the cat swiped at him. If Zheng Tan had not retreated quickly, he would have definitely been caught. Sure enough, cats in the wild had bad tempers. They did not recognize people when they were angry. Perhaps the cat had been trapped here for a long time and was tired. After Zheng Tan tried a few times, the cat's movements became a little slower. Just when he was slightly relieved, Zheng Tan was almost scratched by its claws. In a fit of anger, Zheng Tan slapped it back. Perhaps it could not take the slap, and after being slapped by Zheng Tan, the cat fell to the ground, but its eyes were still fixed on Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan was ready to give it one last try. If it did not let him touch it, he would leave it alone. When Zheng Tan's paw touched the iron frame, the cat's leg shrank, but it did not wave its paw at Zheng Tan like before. Although it was still staring at Zheng Tan, the threat in its eyes was much less. Only now did it realize that I was being kind? Zheng Tan scolded in his heart. When the cat was caught in the clamp, it probably hated him as well. Now that it realized that he was trying to help it, it did not wave its paw. Although it was a toy for the children in the village, it still took Zheng Tan some effort. This clamp was different from the one in the Jiao Pa's hometown that Zheng Tan had seen before. After breaking open the iron clamp, the cat quickly moved its leg away from the clamp. It did not bother to lick its wound and roared loudly a few times. Its roar was different from that of a normal house cat. It was not as sharp, and it was not as domineering as those large felines, but it was still very imposing. Looking at the situation, Zheng Tan suddenly felt that this cat was more like a young man who had just come out of the underworld and was venting his anger after being scammed. The Jiao family members were already calling for Zheng Tan. They were probably anxious because Zheng Tan had not been seen for a long time and heard the roar of some kind of animal. Zheng Tan looked at the cat's wound. It was bleeding just now, but now it was better. Looking at its movements, it did not seem to be too serious. At least its bones were not broken. After feeling that everything was fine, Zheng Tan ran to the place where the internship team was resting. Seeing that Zheng Tan was back, the internship team continued their journey. After hearing the roar, the teacher in charge suspected that there was some kind of animal, so they did not dare to stay here any longer. Did Black Charcoal fight with the animal just now? The Jiao Yuan asked while walking. I don't think so. Our cat is not a sheriff. It's not that aggressive, the Jiao Ma said. Although it was unlikely that Zheng Tan had fought, to be safe, the 4 members of the Jiao family picked up Zheng Tan and checked it. There is blood on its paws. Little Pomelo found suspected blood when she wiped Zheng Tan's paws with a wet tissue. They nervously pinched Zheng Tan's paws and looked at them for a long time. They did not find any wounds, and everything was normal when it walked. Maybe it bullied some animal again, Little Pomelo said. Our cat bullied animals? The Jiao Ma doubted. She thought that animals in the wild were all fierce. Even a stray cat was a beast, not a cat. Compared with a stray cat, of course a wild animal was fiercer. However, seeing that their cat was really not injured, she did not say anything more. It was just that the Jiaos had let go of their worries too early. That night, the 4 members of the Jiao family did not go out. They stayed in the room and talked about what they had learned over the past few days. Zheng Tan was about to jump out of the window. The Jiao family was used to this guy walking outside for 2 hours every day. They were about to say something when they heard a sound similar to a cat's howl. Although it was a little different, it should be a cat. There were always a few cats whose howls were different from others. This was not uncommon in Chuhua City. Others might not be able to tell, but Zheng Tan could. It was the red-striped cat. Cats had many kinds of howls, and their howls were different depending on their mood and situation. Although they did not speak the same language, Zheng Tan felt that the cat's target was him. He lifted his foot and jumped out of the window. Black Charcoal is out on a date, right? The Jiao Yuan laughed. What are you talking about? Read your book. The Jiao Ma gently slapped the Jiao Yuan and scolded. Chapter 247. After Zheng Tan jumped out of the window, he ran in the direction of the sound. The cat only meowed twice and then stopped. It was probably the base's security personnel who went out to check on the situation. After all, the people in the base were a group of God's favored ones, famous teachers, and a few important researchers. If something happened, they wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. After Jingtan jumped out of the base's wall, he looked around. A group of base security personnel passed by. They didn't see any suspicious beasts, but it seemed like they wouldn't give up just yet. They would walk around a few times just in case. Jingtan thought for a moment and walked towards the house that the cat often went to. That should be the place where the cat often went. Maybe he could meet it. The owner of the house was either sent to the hospital or moved away temporarily. The house was still there. The surrounding of the burning house was burned black. It was said that the specimens inside were all destroyed. While she was thinking, Jingtan sensed something and turned to look at the bushes beside her. Over there, the cat was walking towards Jingtan, but it still looked around vigilantly as it walked. He didn't know if this guy had adapted after half of its whiskers were burned. It was lucky to meet Jingtan this time, but it couldn't be so lucky every time. After the cat walked towards Jingtan, it stopped at the edge of the bushes and looked at Jingtan. Then it turned around and wagged its tail. After 2 steps, it looked back at Jingtan. Was it asking him to follow? Jingtan looked around. There didn't seem to be anyone walking around. Following it, Jingtan wanted to know where the cat was taking him. Could it be looking for treasure? Jingtan thought about the few movies he had watched with little Pomelo. Didn't they all say that animals would repay kindness? There was also a parrot that had lived for decades telling a poor child the location of a pirate's treasure. Treasures, just thinking about it made him a little excited. The cat saw that Jingtan was following and sped up. They went down the mountain from the side where there were very few residents and then continued in another direction. Jingtan didn't know what was over there, but every time Jingtan hesitated whether to continue following, the cat would stop and signal Jingtan to hurry up. Its eyes were filled with disdain, as if it couldn't stand Jingtan's lackadaisical behavior. Usually, it was Jingtan who despised other cats, but now it was being despised by a cat. Jingtan took a deep breath and continued to follow it. However, at the same time, he also looked around and memorized the path. There were many wild habits of cats that Jingtan could learn from, such as scent rubbing, urine marking and so on. Now that they were in the wilderness and there was no one around, Jingtan didn't care so much. When he wanted to pee, he would find a landmark to pee. He wasn't embarrassed when no one was staring at him. Well, the red-striped cat next to him seemed to be a female. But a cat was a cat, and it was much better than being stared at. When Jingtan realized the problem of time, he suddenly realized that the sky had begun to brighten. In other words, he had been running outside for the whole night. Was it too late to go back now? Jingtan looked at the forest behind him that blocked his view. The Jiao family was probably worried, right? But since he had already walked so far, if he turned back now, wouldn't it mean that he had run for nothing all night? So Jingtan decided to continue following. It had rained during the day in the forest, so Jingtan and the red-striped cat found a place to hide from the rain. The cat liked to stay in the tree. Fortunately, the branches and leaves on the tree were dense at this time of the year, so they could block the rain. Jingtan wasn't used to it, so he found a big leafy plant that he didn't know what it was. He tore off a few leaves and put them on the branches to make a simple shelter from the rain. Although it wasn't as effective as an umbrella, it was much better than staying in the tree. After running for the whole night, Jingtan was hungry and tired. He only ate a few fruits along the way. Jingtan didn't dare to eat anything outside. There were a lot of plants that he didn't know about, so he didn't dare to eat them. During his time at the base, he had learned about some edible fruits when he went out with the trainee team. He could make do with them, but after all, cats were carnivores. Without meat to replenish his energy, Jingtan didn't know how long he could last. The red-striped cat next to him didn't tell him how far they had to run. To be honest, Jingtan now regretted following them. Although he had made markings along the way, he was still nervous. What if he got lost in the wild? Although he could identify the direction according to the sun, Jingtan wasn't a real wild cat, so he couldn't be absolutely sure. He hoped that it wasn't too far away, or he would just go back directly. If he went back now, it should still be too late. He didn't want to lose his precious cat life in this forest where there wasn't even a shadow of a human. Listening to the sound of the rain hitting the leaves around him and the cries of some other animals, Jingtan closed his eyes and prepared to take a nap. Suddenly, his ear itched. The cat next to him was licking Jingtan's fur. This was a sign of a good relationship between cats. The cats in the compound sometimes licked each other's fur, but Jingtan wasn't used to it. Pulling at her ears, Jingtan moved her head away slightly. The cat stopped licking her ears and started combing her hair. Cats spend a lot of time licking their fur. The two cats squatted next to each other in the tree to rest. In the afternoon, Jingtan opened his eyes. The rain had stopped, and the sun had broken through the clouds and shone on the forest. The birds around started to chirp again. The red-furred cat jumped down the tree and rushed into the forest. It didn't take long for it to come back. When it came back, it had a snake as thick as an adult's thumb in its mouth. The snake was still alive. After it came back with the snake, the red-furred cat looked at Jingtan in the tree. When Jingtan jumped down, it threw the snake in front of Jingtan, meaning for Jingtan to eat. Jingtan looked at the snake on the ground. He didn't know if the snake was poisonous, but he didn't know. After it was thrown on the ground, it probably wanted to run away. The ears of the red-furred cat that caught the snake twitched, and it didn't care about the snake anymore. It tiptoed in another direction. From the looks of it, it had probably found another prey, and one that was even more attractive than the snake. Jingtan retracted his gaze and looked at the snake on the ground again. He was hungry now. In the past, he didn't eat raw food, but in this forest, just eating fruits wouldn't give him enough strength to run. This was even more dangerous. If he didn't even have the strength to run away, it was tantamount to suicide, let alone go back. The snake did not manage to escape, and its head was smashed by Jingtan. Jingtan couldn't accept this kind of raw food, but his stomach accepted it completely. When he really ate, the red-furred cat had already returned. It had a bird in its mouth. It was a little bigger than the magpie Jingtan saw in Chuhua University. It was still alive and was flapping its wings in the cat's mouth. However, it soon stopped flapping and entered the red-furred cat's stomach. Watching a wild animal eat up close wasn't a very pleasant thing. It was quite bloody. In order to replenish his strength, Jingtan ate as much snake meat as possible. He didn't look at the ferocious cat eating the bird again. Jingtan didn't finish the snake. He only ate half of it. This was the first time he tried this. Because of psychological reasons, he wasn't completely used to it. However, since there was a first time, there would be a second time and a third time. Jingtan decided to catch prey himself next time. He couldn't rely on the red-furred cat. As for the bird, all that was left was a few bones on the ground and a blood-stained feather that had been forcefully torn off. There were other wild animals coming over. They probably smelled the scent. Jingtan and the red-furred cat quickly left the place and found a new place to rest. After eating, the red-furred cat began to spend time licking its fur. There were still bloodstains on the corners of its mouth. However, after licking its fur, it quickly returned to its original state. It was lazy and was completely different from the ferocious cat just now. Jingtan found a few leaves and wiped them. It had just rained, so there were many traces of water on the leaves and in some of the holes in the rocks. Jingtan could still wipe the bloodstains. After resting for a while, they continued on their way. The more they walked, the more confused Jingtan became about the direction. Before, Jingtan had some confidence that he could return, but now, if the red-furred cat didn't lead the way, Jingtan would definitely get lost. Just as Jingtan was thinking about when to return, he saw a big red guy. On the other side of the stream, there was a big wild boar. Jingtan estimated that this guy might be more than 300 kilograms. The wild boars people had seen in the forest were generally 150 to 200 kilograms. Even a 100 to 200 kilogram wild boar could cause a lot of trouble for people, not to mention such a big guy. However, what made Jingtan more curious was the color of the wild boar's fur. Under the sun, the red fur on its body was like a burning fire, bright and eye-catching. Jingtan felt that he should be feeling a sense of danger now. It wasn't a good thing to encounter a wild boar, but this feeling was very strange. He felt that the wild boar didn't have any intention of attacking him. The stream in the middle was very shallow. If a person stood in it, they wouldn't even reach their knees. It would be very easy for the wild boar to come over. The red-furred cat growled at the other side. The wild boar on the other side of the stream looked at Jingtan and the red-furred cat, then raised its head and pouted. With a sense of arrogance, it rushed into the forest and quickly disappeared. One could only guess which direction the wild boar went from some sounds. After the wild boar left, Jingtan still didn't give up on the idea of going back. However, when he moved his ears and looked in the direction of the soft sounds in the grass, Jingtan saw a cat. The cat also had red stripes on its body, but there were other colors. The proportion of red was not much. Its size was about the same as the cat that brought Jingtan here. The two of them were playing around. Then, Jingtan saw a few more cats poking their heads out of the grass. Jingtan now realized that the red-furred cat wasn't bringing him to find the treasure, but to its nest. Since they were almost there, Jingtan wasn't in a hurry to go back. If he wanted to go back, he would have to rely on the cat. Otherwise, he wouldn't know the way. In the red-furred cat's nest, or rather, in this territory that they had circled, there were more than 10 cats. Each of the cats had more or less red stripes or patches on their bodies. The one who really led these cats was a red cat that was about the same size as Monseigneur. It didn't have any stripes or any other colors on its body. Generally speaking, cats weren't social animals. However, it was different here. They lived in the same place, but they each had their own nest. They wouldn't squeeze together. Other than playing around, they would climb up the trees to sleep and even eat. It was a very strange group of cats. Towards Jingtan, an outsider, a few of the cats showed signs of rejection and vigilance. The other cats didn't get close to him, but they didn't alienate him. The big red-furred cat in the lead, other than hunting, spent most of its time lying on a tall tree. These cats should be related by blood, right? Jingtan guessed. Chapter 248. Jingtan could not stay there any longer after a day. None of the cats seemed to have any intention of leaving the area. Even if a cat did leave, Jingtan did not dare to follow it. He did not know if the cat was going in the same direction as him. The red-striped cat that brought him here had been staying in the area since it came back. When it ran out last night, Jingtan was full of expectations and followed it. In the end, he found out that it was only going to look for food and had no intention of going out. Jingtan was lying on a branch, trying to figure out a way to get back. He did not bring a collar or any signal tracker with him when he came to the training base. Perhaps it would be useless even if he did. According to the teacher in charge, the expedition team had mentioned in their notes that there were many places in the mountain forest that they could not detect any signal at all. The compass was useless as well. It was probably due to the geology and magnetic field. This was also one of the reasons why this vast forest had not been conquered yet. Jingtan was in a hurry to leave. First, he was afraid that the Jiao family would be worried. Second, he felt that it was not safe for him to stay here. There were not many cats gathered here, but most of them were female cats. They were all very strong. Every one of them was at least one size bigger than Jingtan. Even the smallest cat here, which was probably not an adult yet, was slightly bigger than Jingtan. They were slightly more ferocious. Jingtan could not accept having sex with a cat. Even if he could accept it, it would not be a pleasant experience. Just thinking about it made him shiver. As he was thinking, a sound came from under the tree. A few cats were fighting over a mouse. Jingtan came here. In addition to the leading cat with red fur, he also saw a red-furred wild boar and a red-furred mouse. The few cats were fighting over the red-furred mouse. Yesterday, a nearly 20-centimeter red-furred mouse had been taken up by the leading cat for dinner. Later, a few small red-furred mice were caught by the cats. They were probably the cubs of the big mouse. It seemed that the big cat had dug up a mouse nest. The small red-furred mice were snatched by the cats as if they saw a delicacy. They even fought over a small mouse. Yesterday, the red-striped cat had fought with another cat. After it won, it immediately ate the small red-furred mouse, afraid that it would be snatched by other cats if it didn't pay attention. From yesterday to now, Enchanting had eaten a few fruits, a bird's egg, and a fish caught in the stream. The fruit was eaten by a cat. Enchanting saw that it was not poisonous, so he ate a few fruits on the tree. The taste was not bad. The bird's egg was dropped in the grass when the cats were catching birds. The cat did not want the bird's egg, so Enchanting picked it up. For the cats, the bird's egg was just a toy. When they were bored, they played with it like a ball. As for eating it, they had no interest. Enchanting thought about the experience of eating the fish. Maybe it was the cat's tolerance for the fishy smell. Enchanting had a hard time eating it, but he did not feel nauseous after eating it. The internal organs and fish head were not eaten. After Enchanting caught the fish, he cut it open with his claws, removed the internal organs, and rinsed it with the water of the stream a few times. The water of the stream was very clear. As for the parasites and microorganisms, Enchanting did not care about them. He could not care about them. It was better to fill his stomach first. The cats also ate the fish and drank the water here and lived well. They grew strong and healthy. Enchanting believed that he should be able to bear it. Looking at the sun that rose and began to set, Enchanting made up his mind and decided to go out and try. Even if he could not return to the base, this forest was not the Amazon jungle. If he walked in one direction and was more careful, he would be able to get out, right? At most, he would have to wander around for another 10 days, half a month, or even a few months. It would be good if he could go back. If he waited here, he did not know when the cats would leave. If they did not leave, then would he have to stay here forever? After making the decision, Enchanting came down from the tree and looked around. There were a few cats playing around. The red-striped cat was lying on the tree and sleeping. The leader cat was looking at the birds flying in the sky and curling its lips. It was probably thinking about where to go to look for food at night. Should he say hello? Enchanting snorted in his heart. There was a language barrier. How could he say hello? He remembered that when he came here, he seemed to have come from that direction. There was a stream there, and there was a big wild boar there. He should walk along the stream. After Enchanting confirmed the direction, he lifted his feet and walked in that direction. As he walked, Enchanting felt that the leader cat was looking at him. It did not stop him, nor did it do anything else. After walking for about 50 meters, Enchanting heard a call from behind. It was the red-striped cat. It had come down from the tree and was running towards Enchanting. Perhaps it realized that Enchanting was going to leave, so it came over to stop and persuade him to stay. However, before it could get close, the leader cat jumped down and slapped the red-striped cat to stop it from coming closer. The red-striped cat pressed its ears and seemed to be very unhappy. It felt that Enchanting was a good cat and would be a good companion, so it brought him back. How could it leave? After stopping the red-striped cat and making sure that it would not come over, the leader cat walked in the direction of Enchanting. Enchanting felt some pressure from its larger body, but Enchanting did not feel any malice or threat. When the leader cat passed by Enchanting, it paused and looked at Enchanting, then continued to walk. After walking a little further, it turned back to look at Enchanting again. Enchanting's heart skipped a beat. It was leading the way. He hurried to catch up. After running for 2 steps, Enchanting stopped and turned back. The striped cat was still standing there. It did not follow him, but it kept looking at him. If it was a cat that lived in the jungle, it would be good to stay here. Unfortunately, Enchanting's ambition was not here, and he was not a real cat. He actually wanted to make a comfortable nest for the striped cat that could shelter it from the rain, but later he realized that it would be too conspicuous. If someone came here, they would probably find it. With Enchanting's ability, he could not make a nest that was too hidden. Since these cats lived well here, they must have their own survival skills. Zheng Tan did not want to be nosy. If he could leave successfully, he probably would not come here again. Zheng Tan thought. After one last look, Zheng Tan lifted his feet and followed the cat in front of him. It was a little different from what Zheng Tan had imagined. The places that the leader cat led Zheng Tan through were different from what Zheng Tan remembered yesterday. Along the way, the leader cat also caught a red-haired mouse. It was probably from the same litter as the little red-haired mice, but it did not expect to be bumped into by the big cat. The tail of the red-haired mouse was stepped on by the leader cat. Compared to the paws of the leader cat, the red-haired mouse was really not enough. Zheng Tan looked. The leader cat did not seem to care about such a small red-haired mouse. Today, when the other cats were fighting for the little red-haired mice, the big cat did not even bother to look at them. The two cat paws played with the red-haired mouse for a while, then the leader cat lost interest. It pushed the half-dead red-haired mouse towards Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan lowered his head and looked at the red-haired mouse that rolled in front of his paws. It was lying on the ground with its belly turned over, but there was no other movement. It looked like it was about to die. He did not move. In the past few days, he had eaten snakes and fish, but he really had not eaten a mouse. He had killed one, but he could not bring himself to eat it. The leader cat continued to walk forward. Zheng Tan did not care about the red-haired mouse on the ground and planned to follow it. Unexpectedly, the leader cat saw that Zheng Tan did not touch the red-haired mouse, so it turned around and pushed the red-haired mouse to Zheng Tan's feet. Did this mean that if he did not eat the mouse, he would not lead the way? But Zheng Tan really did not want to eat this. At least, he could not eat it now. The two cats stood there like this, facing each other. Zheng Tan was helpless. They could not keep staring at each other like this, right? But the cat in front of him was looking at him with an ungrateful look. What should I do? Zheng Tan looked around, and his eyes fell on a vine plant. He went over and tore off a section of the vine, removed the leaves on the vine, and tied the red-haired mouse on the ground with that section of the vine. He held the extra section of the vine in his mouth. After that, Zheng Tan raised his chin towards the cat in front of him. Is this okay? The leader cat looked at Zheng Tan, then looked at the thing that was tied up like a cocoon. It looked at Zheng Tan with disdain, then lifted its feet and walked forward. It did not matter if it looked down on it, as long as it led the way. After all, they would go their separate ways in the future. Out of sight, out of mind. Zheng Tan thought to himself. However, he continued to walk for a while. After the cat in front of him ate a few unknown insects along the way, Zheng Tan became more and more suspicious. Did this big cat actually want to come out to look for food? Since there was no better way for the time being, Zheng Tan continued to follow it. At worst, he could wait for the cat to finish looking for food and then follow it back to the forest. The red-haired mouse that was tied up like a cocoon was swung around as Zheng Tan ran. Zheng Tan was too lazy to care about whether it was dead or alive. After being played like that by the leader cat, it was probably going to die soon. Anyway, he was not going to eat the red-haired mouse. When the time came, he would just throw it away. About half an hour later, Zheng Tan jumped onto a tree, climbed to a high place, and looked at the setting sun. He felt that his sense of direction, which had disappeared for a day and a night, had returned. He was suddenly in a good mood. This was not the place where he came from. It was a little off, but not far. Zheng Tan felt that he could find the way he came from. As for the leading cat, after bringing Zheng Tan here, it turned around and left. Perhaps it knew that cats like them could not wander too far away, and they could not appear in areas where humans lived. Therefore, it had to guard this place, a place where no humans had entered. As for the striped cat, it was probably an accident that it appeared at the base. Zheng Tan couldn't get used to their lives, and they couldn't get used to the life that Zheng Tan wanted them to live. Looking at the endless forest under the twilight, Zheng Tan took a deep breath and prepared to rush to the base. As for the half-dead red-haired mouse, Zheng Tan looked down and saw that the mummified red-haired mouse was chewing on the vines energetically. Its two front teeth moved, and the vines were bitten open. The vines were much thicker than the red-haired mouse's teeth, and Jingtan thought that the vines were quite sturdy. He did not expect the red-haired mouse to bite open a big hole as easily as tofu. It looked like the vines were about to break. There was no movement just now, and in the blink of an eye, it was like this. Noticing that Jingtan was looking at it, the red-haired mouse, which had already squeezed half of its head out of the vines, fiercely bared its two small white teeth at Jingtan. Jingtan now understood that the red-haired mouse's bared teeth depended on who it was facing. If the leader cat was there, it would only dare to play dead. Chapter 249. A mouse was not afraid of a cat. A small mouse was acting fierce in front of a cat. This mouse was not even as big as an egg when it was curled up. How could it be so arrogant? To be honest, it was Jingtan's first time encountering such a situation. Therefore, his original plan to throw away this troublesome mouse after the leader cat left was changed. The vines on this little mouse were still tied up and had not been completely bitten off. What was even more arrogant was that after the red-haired mouse glared at Jingtan, it continued to gnaw on the vines. It did not seem to care about Jingtan at all. It was really unscrupulous. Jingtan raised his hand, intending to teach this rampant red-haired mouse a lesson. Previously, the red-haired mouse was tied up with vines. Now that they had walked for so long, the red-haired mouse had already squeezed its head out of the cocoon. At the same time, under the cocoon, its small tail was also exposed. Jingtan bent his palm, lifted the red-haired mouse's tail, and spun it around. After 20 rounds, Jingtan stopped. The red-haired mouse did not move for a long time, as if it was dizzy from being spun around. Jingtan raised his hand and was ready to poke the mouse to see if it was stupid from being spun around. Unexpectedly, just as his hand was about to touch it, the red-haired mouse suddenly stretched out its neck to bite. If it were not for Jingtan's quick reaction, and the fact that the red-haired mouse's movements were affected by the spinning, it would probably have been bitten. Looking at the red-haired mouse biting the vines, he knew that this guy's teeth and bite force were quite lethal. It actually had the courage and strength to bite. However, at this time, Jingtan did not plan to spin it around anymore. He just wanted to break its neck. What was important now was to hurry on. He did not have time to waste here with a mouse. However, just as Jingtan raised his claw halfway, the red-haired mouse that had almost bitten off the vines suddenly stopped and looked around vigilantly. It stretched out its neck to look under the tree, and revealed a sense of cautiousness, as if it had discovered something dangerous. Jingtan didn't know if the red-haired rat had truly discovered the abnormality or if it was plotting something. Just in case, Jingtan still had to be vigilant. If there really was an abnormality, he had to pay attention and deal with it early. Thus, Jingtan quickly pressed the red-haired rat down, not allowing it to move. Then, he looked down the tree. Suddenly, the red-haired rat squeaked as it was pressed down by Jingtan. It struggled, but was unable to move away from Jingtan's palm. Jingtan did not have the slightest intention of pitying it. If he used a little more strength, he would be able to squash it to death. Only then did the red-haired rat realize that the cat in front of it was also a dangerous creature. Perhaps in its memory, it only had a deep fear of the cats in that area, but it had no memory of Jingtan, an animal with a very strange smell. It probably also felt that Jingtan had no intention of eating it, which was why it was so rampant before. Its experience since birth had taught it that being bigger than it did not mean that it was dangerous, and being smaller than it did not mean that it was harmless. Unfortunately, this time, it had miscalculated. This cat indeed had no intention of eating it, but it was not to be trifled with either. It had enough power to squash it to death with one palm. Therefore, after it cried out once, it stopped, and after struggling for a while, it settled down again. However, its eyes were looking around, probably thinking about how to escape. Jingtan did not pay attention to the red-haired rat that he was stepping on. He focused on looking down, his ears perked up to listen to the movements around him. Just when he felt that the red-haired rat was playing with him again, he suddenly heard a slight sound. Jingtan, who was about to find trouble with the red-haired rat, immediately focused his attention on that slight sound. The rustling sound of something rubbing against the ground and the surrounding grass gradually came in this direction. Jingtan held his breath and looked in that direction, feeling nervous. He could already guess what it was. A snake as thick as the mouth of a bull came out from the grass over there. With its size, it would not have any difficulty swallowing a cat the size of Jingtan. Jingtan had seen snakes of this size in the city before, but they were specially raised by some people. At that time, Jingtan had not yet turned into a cat, so he did not feel that much fear. But now, in this forest full of danger, Jingtan's hair almost stood on end. Fortunately, the snake was not heading in the direction of the tree that Jingtan was in. Moreover, the snake had already eaten, and there was an obvious protrusion on the snake's body. Looking around, Jingtan guessed that the snake was probably planning to go to the wetland not far away. After the snake left, Jingtan waited for a while before coming down from the tree. This time, Jingtan did not plan to release or kill the red-haired rat directly. He found another vine and tied the rat up. This time, he spent more effort, tying 2 knots in a circle, then tying the next circle, repeating the process a few times. This way, even if the rat bit off a section of the vine, it would not be able to escape immediately. Yes, Jingtan planned to keep the rat as an early warning. This primeval forest, which could be said to be well preserved, had many dangerous and uninhabited places. In the ancient and magical forest, all kinds of creatures were breeding and living in an endless stream. Countless lives had been here for generations, and the vastness of the primeval forest made people feel that it was unfathomable. In the past 10 or 20 years, expedition teams had been organized both domestically and abroad to explore this forest, which was filled with all kinds of legends and stories. Some universities and research institutes had also organized expedition teams, and once they entered, they would spend 1 or 2 months or even longer. However, there were still many places that people could not reach, and miracles that could not be discovered. At the same time, it also showed that there were countless unpredictable dangers in this forest. Jingtan admitted that he had underestimated this forest. In Jingtan's original mind, the forest that was filled with all kinds of dangers was similar to the Amazon jungle. What was there to be afraid of in a place like Tongshan City? Even when he followed the red-striped cat into the forest, Jingtan did not encounter any danger or crisis. But now, he suddenly realized that he had been too naive. Many of the wild animals that lived in this forest were deliberately hidden, and Jingtan might not be able to discover them in the first place. There were also unknown dangers. Jingtan did not think that he was smarter than the expedition team, and his experience in the forest was not as good as this little rat's. Since he did not have a high IQ and could not compare to the native residents of the forest, and he did not have a second red-striped cat to lead the way, Jingtan chose to take this red-haired rat with him. It might be useful in the future. Even if it was not, it could be used as a backup ration, and when there was danger, it could be used as bait to distract the attention of dangerous creatures. The speed at which they returned to the base was much slower than the speed at which they entered the forest. During the process, Jingtan had to be vigilant of his surroundings. He would stop from time to listen for movements in the surroundings. He also had to take this red-haired rat with him. Once he found that the red-haired rat was about to gnaw off all the vines, he would change to another vine to tie it up. Fortunately, there were many plants and vines here. Jingtan specifically looked for those that were resistant to gnawing and had some thorns to increase the resistance of the red-haired rat's gnawing process. He had heard that there were many plants that had long been extinct in other parts of the world. They were called living fossils by botanists. Perhaps those botanists would scream if they saw them here, but Jingtan had no interest in them at all. Along the way, Jingtan saw a very large tree. Jingtan didn't know what kind of tree it was, and he had never seen it before. He guessed that it was because it was too old. There was a hole in the trunk, and many snakes were crawling in and out of the hole. Jingtan jumped onto a tree to determine the direction he should go and observe his surroundings. He saw the snakes from afar and quickly ran. He didn't dare to court death. Speaking of gains, Jingtan picked up a piece of amber. He had picked it up when he went to the stream to drink water. In the past, he had heard people say that ambers were found in mining areas or by the sea. He didn't expect to find one here. The piece of amber was about the size of a quail egg. There was a small flower inside. He didn't know what kind of flower it was, but if it was a species from tens of thousands of years ago, it would be really valuable as a collector's item. Zheng Tan found a vine and wrapped the amber around his neck. This way, it wouldn't be easy to throw it away. He would give it to little Pomelo when he returned. Zheng Tan didn't feel anything when he wore the amber. It was light and easy to carry. On the way, Zheng Tan ate some fruits and caught a snake. He didn't know which snakes could be eaten and which couldn't. Anyway, he happened to see a snake of the same species as the one he ate last time, so he killed it. It was a little smaller than the one caught by the striped cat. In order to hurry, Zheng Tan bit the bullet and ate some more. He fed the rest to the red-haired rat. Anyway, it was just these things. It didn't matter if it ate or not. The red-haired rat seemed to be very hungry and didn't refuse. Many rodents were omnivores. This red-haired rat could eat meat and vegetables, which saved Zheng Tan a lot of trouble. After walking for 3 days, Zheng Tan quickened his pace at dusk on the 3rd day because he smelled the scent of people. When the sky darkened, Zheng Tan was already running on the mountain where the base was located. It was just that at this time, the light was dim, so many people didn't notice Zheng Tan. Although he was already very tired, Zheng Tan was very excited when he saw the base. He didn't slow down. Instead, he ran even faster. He even forgot that the red-haired rat was tied to the vine in his mouth. In the base's dormitory, Jiao Pa closed the door and walked out of the dormitory building. He wanted to walk around and smoke a cigarette. For the past few days, they had been in a bad mood because of the cat. The 2 children didn't go out with the trainee team for a few days. They said that they wanted to wait in the room. They didn't even close the window, wondering when the cat would come back. Jiao Pa searched in the wild. He even spent money to hire some villagers to help. Jiao Ma asked the residents who lived on the mountain one by one. They all said that they had seen a black cat a few days ago and hadn't seen it since. In fact, in the hearts of many of the surrounding residents, as well as some of the teachers and guards of the base, they were certain that the cat had been dragged away and eaten by some wild animals. This kind of thing had happened here before. There were even cases of dogs being lost. After a while, people would hear about the remains of the cat being found somewhere in the wild. The teeth marks of unknown animals were all on the bones. A few guards who came out to patrol the base saw Jiao Pa. They came over to greet him and ask about the cat. For the past few days, they had seen this teacher with the surname Jiao come out to smoke. They heard that the parents and children at home were worried sick because the cat had gone missing. There were even cat search notices outside. "Teacher Jiao, you haven't found your cat yet?" a young-looking person asked. Jiao Pa shook his head. "Don't worry. Maybe it will come back by itself at any time. In the past, there was a cat in my house that disappeared for a month and came back by itself. Yeah, don't worry. You can go back and rest. Don't go out. Yesterday, someone went out in the middle of the night and was bitten by a snake. Fortunately, it wasn't a venomous snake." The guards talked one after another. Suddenly, one of them pointed at the wall not far behind Jiao Pa and shouted, "What is that?" Zheng Tan had just climbed over the wall when he saw a beam of light coming over. He quickly jumped down and planned to run to the building where he lived. Unexpectedly, the vine suddenly broke off when he landed. The red-haired rat had almost bitten off the vine. When Zheng Tan landed on the ground, the rat pulled the vine away. It wanted to escape, but Zheng Tan held it down with a slap. Chapter 250. Seeing Zheng Tan, Father Jiao's heart, which had been hanging in the air for the past few days, finally relaxed. It was good that he was back. He was worried that his cat's son had been taken away by some wild animal. However, when Jiao Pa walked closer, he frowned when he saw the mouse that Zheng Tan had pinned to the ground with the help of his flashlight. The light at night was not good, and it would affect people's judgment of color. Even so, when the flashlight shone on the mouse, the red light reflected made Jiao Pa's heart skip a beat. His heart, which had just calmed down, was in his throat again, and his heart rate increased. The security guards behind him rushed over. "Hey, is this Mr. Jiao's cat?" It should be. It seems to be the one on the cat search notice. It's this one, definitely. Oh, it even has a mouse in its mouth. Is it back for a reward? The security guard who first saw Jingtan climbing over the wall said as he looked at the squeaking mouse. The other security guards also turned their attention to the mouse. Why do I feel that the mouse's fur is red? It really is red. Is it dyed? Let's see if it's a pet mouse. The security guard started to discuss. The light was not good, so the security guard who saw Jingtan only saw Jingtan holding something in his mouth. Before he could see clearly, Jingtan had jumped over the wall. Now, he naturally thought that Jingtan came in with the mouse in his mouth and did not notice the vines that fell on the grass. Jiaopa took a few deep breaths and said to Jingtan, "Don't let go." Then, he looked at the few security guards. After looking around, he said to the young security guard, "Can you lend me your lunchbox?" "Oh, yes." The young man was looking at the red-haired mouse curiously. When he heard Jiaopa, he quickly handed over the lunchbox in his hand. In the afternoon, his girlfriend sent him a lunchbox of mung bean soup. After he finished it, he planned to bring it back to her when he was on patrol. He could use the time to have some sweet moments. A lunchbox wasn't worth much, so it was fine to borrow it. In any case, this bunch of teachers would definitely compensate him when the time came. The Jiaopa couldn't care less about the mung bean smell in the lunchbox. He opened the lid of the lunchbox to reveal an opening. "Hey, Teacher Jiao, are you trying to catch mice?" "I'll do it. I know how to catch mice. I used to catch field mice when I went to the wild with other people." The young man handed the flashlight in his hand to the colleague next to him and squatted down to catch them. "You." Before Father Jiao could finish his sentence, the man reached out and grabbed the red-haired rat under the cat's paw. The Jiaopa quickly opened the plastic lunchbox and passed it to her. "Be careful. Don't." The Jiaopa wanted to tell the guard not to squeeze it to death. After all, when the students were doing experiments in school, they accidentally broke the necks of the white mice when they were doing experiments. The Jiaopa looked at the rat that was much smaller than the students when they were doing experiments and then looked at the careless guard who volunteered to help. The Jiaopa was anxious. But this time, before the Jiaopa could finish his sentence, the guard had already thrown the red-haired rat into the lunchbox. Although his actions were a little rough, he did a good job. The only regret was that his hand was bitten. "Thank you, but you still have to go to the infirmary for a checkup. The wound can't be ignored." "Bill me," the Jiaopa said to the young man after he closed the lid of the lunchbox. There was a small hole in the lid of the lunchbox, so there was no need to worry about the rat suffocating. When the young man heard this, he thought, "Hey, it's free treatment." There were people on duty 24/7 in the infirmary. Recently, there were a few medical students who came for their internships. He heard that they were quite pretty. The young man's heart was rippling. After greeting his colleagues, he went straight to the infirmary. He had a reason to skip work and see beautiful girls. What a good thing. After the guards left, the Jiaopa carefully held the lunchbox and looked at Jingtan, who was still looking around. "Where are you going?" His tone was calm, but Jingtan felt that there was a pressure around him. He shivered. It was probably because of the low temperature at night in the mountains. Jingtan followed the Jiaopa back to the dormitory. He directly climbed through the window. Anyway, he lived on the second floor, so it was easy to climb through the window. Little Pomelo was sitting at the table with a pen in her hand. She wasn't in the mood to work on the summer vacation homework that was spread out on the table. If she flipped a few pages forward, she would see a pencil-drawn cat on every page. While she was thinking, the screen was pulled open. Little Pomelo and the Jiao Yuan, who was torturing the crab to vent his depression, both looked at the window. Black charcoal. "Mom, black charcoal is back." Jiaoma had just finished washing the clothes. She had just received a call from the Jiaopa. The Jiaopa had something to do and would be back later. Seeing the black cat on the table, his depressed mood was finally lifted. He thought to himself, "This cat is just like a human." If I don't leave it alone for a period of time, it will go crazy. This time, it even went missing, causing everyone to be worried. Grounding it was necessary. For the rest of the time, this cat would not be able to go out again. Jiao Ma scolded Jingtan and ordered him to be grounded. At the same time, she carefully checked Jingtan's body to see if he was injured. Then, she found a plastic tub and filled it with water for Jingtan to soak in. Jingtan came back covered in dust. He even felt the active fleas on his body. He really did need a good bath. Huh. Something seemed to be missing. Where's the amber? Jingtan realized that the amber around his neck was gone. He still had it when he went up the mountain. It probably fell off when he went through the bushes around the base. He would look for it tomorrow. After Jingtan finished her bath, she wrapped herself in a towel and sat on a stool to wait for her fur to dry. Father Jiao came back with an anxious look on his face. He didn't bring the plastic lunchbox with the red-haired rat, and he didn't know where he put it. What happened? The Jiao Ma asked. Is Black Charcoal injured? The Jiao Pa asked. No, he just had a meal and took a bath. He seems to be in good spirits, the Jiao Ma said. That's good, the Jiao Pa breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that the young guard who was bitten by the red-haired rat was in trouble. It had only been an hour since he was bitten, but the young guard's hand was already swollen like a bun. He was also dizzy. Fortunately, they had a good supply of medicine, and he came to get treatment in time. Otherwise, he might have died. The Jiao Pa immediately came back to check on the situation. When he saw that Jingtan was fine, he gave a few words of advice and left. Jingtan listened to the Jiao Pa's words and broke out in cold sweat. He finally realized how dangerous the rat was. Fortunately, he was not bitten by the rat in the forest. Otherwise, he would have become the feces of the beasts or insects in the forest. Before the Jiao Pa left, he said that he might come back very late. He might not even come back to sleep. The Jiao Pa was not the only one. The other teachers who led the team, whether they were asleep or not, all rushed to the same place. The students who came out to make phone calls were all wondering what had happened. In a room in the base, many teachers were huddled together. It was originally a temporary lounge. Everyone complained that it was too close to the toilet. It was uncomfortable to stay here in the middle of summer, so very few people came here. But now, no one cared. Some male teachers did not change their clothes when they heard the news. They ran over in their singlets and shorts. They did not care if they were laughed at by the other teachers. They stared at the red-haired rat in the cage on the table. The red-haired rat was in the middle of the cage. It was gnawing on a peanut. Its eyes were still looking at the people outside the cage. It did not seem to be afraid at all. Perhaps in its heart, these strange creatures were much better than the cat. The cat had almost killed it, and these strange creatures did not seem to be a threat. When Jingtan went missing, some teachers secretly laughed at the Jiao Pa for bringing a cat. Wasn't he looking for trouble? Even a dog was more obedient than a cat. Cats were troublemakers. When had they ever been obedient? But now, these people were jealous, especially the teacher who brought a dog. Although the dog had helped him catch a lot of prey, it was far less valuable than the red-haired rat. Teacher Jiao, your cat has to be praised this time. An old man in a white singlet and reading glasses went up to observe the red-haired rat. The surrounding teachers did not dare to squeeze with him. Many teachers were taught by this old man. The Jiao Pa smiled and did not say anything. He thought that the cat should be praised, but it should also be grounded. But speaking of which, that cat was really good at causing trouble. Who would have thought that it would come back with a red-haired rat in its mouth after disappearing for a few days? Originally, they thought that it would be a female cat. The Jiao Pa was still not sure whether it was a red-haired rat or not. It needed to be identified, but the possibility was very high. He could not tell which species of red-haired rat it was. He had not done any research on this. The reason why he made it public this time instead of hiding it was because he knew very well that it could not be hidden. The security guards had already seen it. When the time came, it would be exposed. Before calling these teachers over, the Jiaopa had made a few phone calls to prevent things from developing in a bad way. No one else knew about this. This little guy must be taken care of. No, I'll call someone to take care of it, the old man said. We won't trouble you, Professor Wang. We have already arranged for someone to take care of it. The person who spoke was a middle-aged man. He was a professor at Tsinghua University. He had the most authority among the group of young teachers at Tsinghua University. Although he had to give in to the old man most of the time, he could not give in on this matter. The old man was now a member of the research institute. This red-haired rat must be kept in Tsinghua University's own place and use their own people. This was also the instruction given by Dean Xie during the phone call. When it was time to fight, they had to fight. After all, Dean Xie was responsible for it. Dean Xie would arrive tomorrow morning. Hey, it's not yours. Why are you in such a hurry? Little Jiao, don't worry. The person I found is absolutely professional. He has been raising rats professionally for 20 years, the old man said to the Jiaopa, ignoring the person's words. Well, the address had changed from Teacher Jiao to Little Jiao. The leaders and seniors were quarreling, and the Jiaopa did not dare to interrupt. He stayed between the leaders and seniors. The Jiaopa went back to his room at night and brought in a box with cat litter. He asked Zheng Tan to urinate or poop in the box. Are they going to do a urine and poop test? Zheng Tan stared at the box as if he was facing an enemy. He had never used this kind of thing at home. The Jiaopa sighed and said to Zheng Tan, they just want to see what you ate. In other words, those people only wanted to know if Zheng Tan ate other red-haired rats. It would be better if there were some undigested fur and bones. They could find many things worth studying. Zheng Tan's face twitched, and he continued to twitch, studying poop. These scientists were really hardcore. If he knew it would be so troublesome, he would have just thrown the red-haired rat outside. Why did he bring it in? Zheng Tan regretted, but it was too late to regret now. At that time, he was rushing back and did not even think about the red-haired rat. When he regained his senses, he had already climbed over the wall and entered the base. Chapter 251. After Father Jiao gave his instructions, he didn't come back for the whole night. It was said that he was held up by the leaders and seniors for a discussion. The species of the red-haired rat hadn't been completely identified yet, but it was now regarded as a treasure by the researchers in related fields. Father Jiao, as the first person to discover the red-haired rat, should have the right to speak. He was held up by the people there and couldn't leave, so he didn't sleep well the whole night. Although those people usually went to bed early and woke up early, they would get excited whenever they encountered something they were interested in. It was common for them to stay up all night in the laboratory when they were young, but they couldn't stay up all night as they were getting older. However, they made an exception this time. Therefore, if they didn't leave and rest, Jiaopa wouldn't be able to rest either. Zheng Tan woke up with the Jiao family early in the morning. Jiao Ma bought breakfast for the two kids and Zheng Tan. A man in his early 20s came in while they were eating. Hello, Miss Gu. The man greeted her with a smile. He quickly glanced around the room and paused on Zheng Tan for a while, then moved his eyes away. It seemed like he was looking for something. You must be Shaoli. I already know. It's in the bathroom, Jiao Ma said as she led the man to the bathroom. Zheng Tan was eating an egg when he saw the man putting on gloves while walking towards the bathroom. He immediately knew what he was after. Everyone was having breakfast early in the morning, but the man came in to take away the poop. How impatient could he be? Scientists were indeed a strange race. The man named Shaoli put on his gloves and came out with the box. When he saw Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo looking at him, he seemed a little embarrassed. He knew it wasn't right for him to come at this time, but he had no choice. His superiors had already given him the order, so he had to carry it out. He had promised to dedicate his life to science. What was a little embarrassment? Mom, let's take black charcoal to the vet after breakfast. I heard that there are many parasites in the wild. If he eats something bad. Jiao Yuan said. However, before Jiao Yuan could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Jiao Ma, eat your food. You don't have to worry about this. After eating, go and do your summer homework. After a pause, Jiao Ma added, black charcoal can't go out. You have to wait for your dad to come back. Jiao Ma wanted to take Jing Tan out to see a veterinarian, but Jiao Pa had already told her that those people were now eyeing black charcoal, so she couldn't take him out. Jiao Ma sighed as she looked at the cat eating an egg on the chair. Raising a cat was even more troublesome than raising a child. Why was he so good at causing trouble? She wasn't interested in any red species or new genetic discoveries at all. She just wanted the cat to behave. Unfortunately. Sigh. When it was almost noon, Jiao Pa finally came back. Along with Jiao Pa were a few people in their 40s and 50s, as well as 2 old men. Zheng Tan recognized a few of them. The one leading them was the Dean of the Institute of Biological Sciences at Tsinghua University. In the past, when this person saw Zheng Tan around the Institute of Biological Sciences, he didn't have much of a reaction. He didn't seem like someone who liked cats. But now, this person couldn't hide the smile on his face. He had been staring at Zheng Tan since he entered the door. He nodded and said, "Good cat. This is a good cat." Zheng Tan was speechless. He couldn't bring himself to be happy with this compliment. It would have been better if the word cat had been changed to human. Being called a good person was better than being called a good cat. It had to be said that Jiao Pa's prediction was very accurate. These people came over to ask Jiao Pa to take Zheng Tan out. They wanted to see if they could find the red-haired rat's territory through Zheng Tan and find more red-haired rats. One rat wasn't enough to go around. Some people even wanted to put a rope around Zheng Tan or put him in a cage to take him out, but the Jiao Pa refused. Zheng Tan followed them out. Many of the people accompanying him were big names in their field of research. However, Zheng Tan didn't feel honored at all, and he didn't have time to look at the others. He was thinking about how to act dumb later. How to act dumb in a more natural way, like a normal cat. The group of people attracted a lot of attention as they walked. Some of the young teachers and researchers working in the base rarely saw one of them, but now they saw a group of them. They stood there and called out their names, not knowing how to say their names. They were so nervous that they even stuttered when they spoke. However, these big names weren't in the mood to talk to the teachers and researchers. They were all staring at the cat in front of them. At the end of the road, Zheng Tan stopped. There was no road ahead. It was all woods and grass. "Hey, why did he stop? Mr. Jiao, why did your cat stop?" A few impatient people asked. Therefore, the Jiao Pa started to work with Zheng Tan in front of everyone and let him continue to lead the way. Zheng Tan yawned. He thought about how Huang had dealt with his mistakes in the courtyard. Then, according to his memory of Huang, he tilted his head and his body and fell to the ground. Then, he started to roll on the ground as if nothing had happened. The Jiao Pa, everyone, the Jiao Pa was impressed by Zheng Tan's ability to act dumb. He must have done it a lot. The others felt a wave of disappointment. Although they didn't have high hopes, there was still hope. Now that they saw Zhang Ziyan's actions, they felt that their hopes were even slimmer. They didn't know that the man and the cat were actually acting in front of them. Of course, no one would believe it. Zheng Tan now understood that she was a cat. A cat could act shamelessly in broad daylight and act like a fool. No one would suspect her. This was the first time he had rolled on the ground in front of everyone. Anyway, he was thick-skinned and wasn't afraid of being laughed at. If it was in the past, he definitely wouldn't have done it. However, rolling on the ground now was better than being targeted in the future. Some people couldn't help but ask the Jiao Pa to continue to order Zheng Tan to look for the rat. Even if they couldn't find it now, they could at least tell them the direction. They just wanted to know if the cat remembered where it caught the red-haired rat. Since these people wanted to follow him, then so be it. Zheng Tan decided to fulfill their wishes. After rolling on the ground, he stood up and shook his fur. He continued to walk forward as if nothing had happened. He played with birds and insects along the way. Since he was still outside, he would be grounded when he got back. He was fine, but the people behind him had it tough. After walking one round, they were all out of breath. Some of the older ones had to be supported by others. They knew that their physical strength was definitely not good enough, but they just wanted to see the direction with their own eyes. They would follow him for a few more steps. If they couldn't hold on any longer, they would ask their subordinates to follow him. Even if they couldn't find it this time, they could still ask someone to go in that direction. Otherwise, with so much manpower and money spent every year, there wouldn't be many new discoveries. What could they find if they ran around like headless flies? They might even lose their lives. The Jiao Pa was still trying to persuade them not to count on Jing Tan and to go back. However, these people were more stubborn than the other. Until. This road seems to be the one we took when we brought the students out to collect specimens, the Jiao Pa said. He didn't know where Jing Tan was leading them to before, but now he finally understood. The cat wanted to torture these people. If they walked a little further, they would find it, and they would have to go back. It's true. Some of them were more familiar with the area. They felt that something was wrong just now, but they didn't say anything. Some of them were still hoping for a fluke. When Jing Tan brought them to a place near the road again, they were finally discouraged. That's right. What can you expect a cat to do according to your wishes? If cats were so good, they would have been used for training by people in certain industries long ago. Why would they train dogs? Perhaps this cat was really just a coincidence. This is fate. An old man who was sitting on a stone and gasping for breath sighed while slapping his legs. He did not have much regret or unwillingness. He had lived for so long and had seen a lot of things. In the past, he had seen albino bears and albino moles that had caused a sensation in this place. He had also followed the expedition team organized by the international organization to explore the mountains and brought back many specimens of living fossils. Now that he could see a suspected red mouse, he should be satisfied. How many people who went in for money never came out? Most of the time, people who found new species or animals that were on the verge of extinction only found them by chance. Just like the old man said, this was fate. The group of people was so tired that even walking back to the base on the road was tiring. In the end, they called a car to pick them up. After the Jiao Pa went back, he talked to the leaders and then took Jing Tan to the vet. After disappearing for a few days, it was better to have a checkup. The vet was not far from the infirmary. Jing Tan also saw the young man who helped catch the red-haired rat. He heard that it was very dangerous yesterday. Fortunately, he survived the treatment in time. He didn't expect that he could talk to girls so energetically now. In the infirmary, the young man was telling a few girls about how he caught a rat, scaring them. Now that he knew that the rat he caught yesterday was a rare animal, he was showing off to everyone. He was the one who caught the rat, and the lunchbox was also his. What? You don't believe me? If you don't believe me, look at my wound. Can a normal rat bite be so swollen? Sure enough, he forgot the pain after the scar healed. Jing Tan despised him. After the checkup, the vet confirmed that Jing Tan's physical condition was good and prescribed some insect repellent for Jing Tan. After leaving the vet, Jing Tan saw that it was close to the place where he climbed the wall last time. He thought about it and went there. He still remembered about Hu Pa. It would be a pity to lose it. The Jiao Pa didn't say much and followed him out. There was a bush there. Yesterday, Jing Tan had crossed from there to take a shortcut. Jing Tan went into the bush and followed the path he took yesterday to search. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound in the bush. He looked over and saw a cat in the bush. It was a domestic cat, but he didn't know whose family it was. At that moment, the domestic cat was playing with something with its paws bent. Jing Tan looked carefully. Wasn't it the amber he lost? Jing Tan rushed over and slapped the cat twice. The cat arched its back and cried out twice, but felt that it was not strong enough. When Jing Tan was about to slap it a third time, it quickly ran away. Jing Tan looked at the amber carefully. Fortunately, it was wrapped in vines. Otherwise, there would be many scratches on it. Pulling the amber wrapped in vines out, Jingtan decided to give it to the Jiaopa first. He couldn't take it anyway. "Mr. Jiao, what is your cat doing?" a security guard looked over and asked. The Jiaopa held the amber Jingtan pulled out at an angle where no one was looking. It then stood up and said to the security guard, "It just got into a fight. This guy likes to bully other cats." The security guard obviously saw the cat that escaped from the bush. He didn't doubt the Jiaopa's words. Early in the morning, someone had asked him to pay attention to the movements of the teacher and the black cat, but he didn't find anything unusual. Wasn't it just a cat? Did those people have to watch it so closely? The Jiaopa seemed to casually change the bag and put the amber wrapped in vines into the bag of insect repellent. Chapter 252. After returning, Jiaopa found an excuse to take a break. He took out the item that his cat's son had taken out and looked at it. When he got it, he wasn't sure what it was. He didn't know if it was a precious item, but his past experience told him that the cat always had its reasons for doing this. So, just in case, he carefully hid it. Now that he had time, he took it out and looked at it. He carefully pulled the vines away, revealing the amber inside. The vines were peeled off and put aside, not thrown away. This plant was found in the flora, and it was indeed from the mountain forest. Jiaopa was sure that his cat's son had indeed been to the mountain forest, but he didn't know what kind of adventure it had encountered. As for the amber, Jiaopa didn't know much about identification. He had only made artificial amber before, and there were a few natural ones that were given to him by others. One of them was a worm amber that was said to be worth tens of thousands of yuan, but the worms in the worm amber were only 80% intact. The inside of the worm amber was a plant. He had only seen artificial amber, not natural amber. Because he was at the base and didn't want to be discovered by others, Jiaopa could only use the simplest identification method to identify whether the amber was artificial or natural. Amber could fluoresce under ultraviolet light. Of course, now that the technology of counterfeiting was getting better and better, artificial amber could also fluoresce, so Jiaopa could only make a preliminary identification. The identification results showed that the amber fluoresced under ultraviolet light, and the small flower inside was very bright. It was so blue that it was almost purple. Jiaopa even checked the rare plants newly compiled by some botanists in the past 2 years, but he couldn't find anything similar to the small flower inside. If the amber was real, Associate Professor Jiao had a hunch that the small flower inside might be a plant from tens of millions of years ago, or even hundreds of millions of years ago, a plant that had never been discovered. Once it was confirmed to be real, it was enough to make the botanists and paleontologists excited. They were not interested in red mice or anything like that. After all, their research was different. However, ancient plants were different. Furthermore, it was a complete flower. There were many problems with the stamen inside. If there was a red mouse, there might be a second one. This amber that contained a complete flower and recorded a natural miracle from tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of years ago was very likely to be unique in the world. For biologists and geologists, the value of amber lay in its historical evolution. For collectors and investors, amber that contained rare organisms or plants could be called a rare treasure. Jiaopa could take out this amber. The matter of the red mouse could be studied by several professors at the same time, and it would definitely be published in Nature. Jiaopa, as the discoverer, would definitely be listed in the journal. This would be of great benefit to him when he applied for project funds in the future. If this amber was included, it would definitely be the icing on the cake. Years ago, when a professor in a paleontology research institute discovered an ancient plant, he was the first author of the research results published in Nature. Jiaopa could do the same. In Tsinghua University, where competition was fierce, from teachers to students, there weren't many teachers at Jiaopa's age who could publish papers and research results in Nature and Science, the 2 top academic journals in the world. It was easy to imagine the benefits that Jiaopa would receive. The red mouse could be regarded as a shining point in nature, and the worm amber was also a miracle inadvertently created by nature. Nature would always inadvertently create one miracle after another, and those who could discover these miracles would always be known as those with great luck. People with great luck. Father Jiao looked at the cat lying on the bed, trying to catch up on its sleep, and rubbed his forehead helplessly. How could a cat cause so much trouble? Zheng Tan was already being targeted. If the amber was exposed, it would be even more troublesome. The matter of the red mouse could be said to be accidental. It was natural for a cat to catch a mouse, but what about the amber? If someone found out, Jiao Pa could only say that it was his own collection. However, Jiao Pa didn't plan to expose the amber. He hoped that everyone's attention would be focused on the red mouse and ignore other things as much as possible. Black charcoal, leave this amber with me for now. Jiao Pa took out a small box. Inside the box was the amber that Zheng Tan found. Zheng Tan heard this. No, this was for little Pomelo. He reached out and was about to snatch the box. I'll keep it for you for now. I'll return it to you when we get back. But you have to promise me that you'll hide it well and don't throw it around, Jiao Pa said again. Zheng Tan thought about it and decided that it was fine. He couldn't take it with him now anyway. It was safer to leave it with Jiao Pa. Zheng Tan wasn't stupid. He could tell from Jiao Pa's expression and words that the amber wasn't a simple item. At least, it was to some people. Rather than keeping it himself or letting little Pomelo keep it, it was better to let Jiao Pa keep it for him. For the next few days, Zheng Tan was very well behaved. He also knew that there were many people watching him. Some of the idiots who thought that they were well hidden had already been discovered by Zheng Tan. Therefore, Zheng Tan felt that it was better to listen to Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma and stay in his room. After all, the student's internship was coming to an end. In 2 days, they would return to Chuhua City. Zheng Tan could still endure for the next few days. For the past few days, Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo had been following the students outside to learn how to make specimens. There were animals, plants, and insects, but Zheng Tan was not interested in them. He was more inclined to listen to the story of the red-haired rat. He heard that the red mouse had caused a commotion. The identification results were probably out. It was the red species that Jiao Pa had mentioned. Yesterday, Zheng Tan had been called over to join in the fun when the photos were taken. This morning, Jiao Yuan showed Zheng Tan a local newspaper. It had a large article about the red nest rat. Yes, the red mouse had been identified as a nest rat by a few professionals. However, it was different from the smaller nest rats. This red nest rat was definitely much bigger than a normal nest rat when it matured. Zheng Tan didn't care whether it was a red nest rat or a red Mickey Mouse. He stared at the few color photos and the article about him in the newspaper. There was a lot of information about the red nest rat in the newspaper. However, there were only 2 vague lines about Zheng Tan. It only said that the red nest rat was accidentally caught by the cat of Associate Professor Jiao Mingxing of Chuhua University School of Life Sciences. After that, there was nothing else. Zheng Tan flipped through the newspaper for a long time, but he didn't see any other words about him. In the only photo with Zheng Tan in it, Zheng Tan was standing next to the Jiao Pa. It was very inconspicuous. No one would recognize that Zheng Tan was the famous Black Sea in the cat community based on this photo. He had a common face. Only when he said his name would people know who he was. Otherwise, with so many black house cats in the country, who would know who he was? At first, Zheng Tan was a little annoyed. Didn't they say that he had made a contribution? What was this? However, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that this was probably what the Jiao Pa wanted. Fame or freedom? After thinking it through, Zheng Tan obviously chose the latter. It was just like when he realized that a cat had no cat rights and was not protected by the law. He could only accept the fact that he was killed. Compared to Zheng Tan's low profile, the red-haired mouse spent a lot of space in the article. The few photos that were taken by professionals attracted a lot of attention. The nest rat's tail was very flexible, and it was also capable of twisting. Especially in the photo where it used its tail to wrap around a tree branch, its body drooped down and hugged a nut. It looked very smart and cute, and its red fur added a lot of points. However, behind the photo, who would have thought that it was actually an extremely dangerous creature? Zheng Tan really realized the value of this red-haired mouse after he returned to Chuhua City. This summer, Chuhua University was destined to not be quiet. According to the usual practice, the undergraduate students had all gone home. Some of the graduate students had also applied for leave to go home. Some of the shops around the university were closed. In addition to the high summer temperature, there should be very few people walking around the campus during the day. However, that was not the case this year. The attention that people paid to the red-haired mouse was beyond Zheng Tan's imagination. If one were to say that there was no hype involved, Zheng Tan would never believe it. However, this did not prevent him from enjoying the show. Zheng Tan squatted on a sycamore tree and looked at the cars with the license plates of various provinces driving in the direction of the Institute of Biological Sciences. There were also some people on the campus who were doing part-time work at the Institute of Biological Sciences during the summer. At this time, they were also guest guides. They wore hats with the words, Institute of Biological Sciences of Chuhua University, printed on them. Although the weather was hot, they were sweating so much that they could drink all the mineral water in one go. Why? Because they were proud. Looking at the people who were running to the Institute of Biological Sciences these days, if they were not leaders of universities or researchers of research institutes, there were also some experts and professors who came from abroad. In the past, the university was famous, but it did not have this kind of attention. Now was the hottest time of the year in Chuhua City. Moreover, now some domestic and foreign research institutes were buying the hair, blood, and other things from the red-haired mouse from the Institute of Biological Sciences of Chuhua University. This made some of the students happy. Especially Exian and the others. In the past, Zheng Tan heard Exian complain that because of the needs of experiments, they had to buy cells or bacteria from abroad. The other party shipped them very quickly, but they were stuck at the domestic customs for too long. Even if they had prepared all kinds of approval forms, licenses, and other relevant materials in advance and handed them to the customs company to act as agents, they spent too much time at the customs. The condition of the cells was deteriorating, and when they came back, they failed and had to order again. Talking about this, Exian and the others had tears of bitterness. But now, when they thought about how the foreign people would also buy things related to the red-haired mouse from them, they felt a burst of joy in their hearts. Zheng Tan heard that the price of a single hair of the red-haired mouse was equivalent to the price of a house in Chuhua City. When the Chuhua Evening News reported this incident, it jokingly said that the red-haired mouse was worth 10,000 taels of gold for a drop of blood. Zheng Tan also heard that the red-haired mouse was raised like a treasure. Even the blood was taken very carefully to ensure the health of the red-haired mouse. At night, the Jiao Pa came back from the courtyard. Today, Principal Xia specially selected 2 female white mice that were bred in the courtyard. He said that he put them in to cultivate a relationship with the red-haired nest mouse. He probably wants to cultivate an excellent second-generation mouse in the future. Principal Xia treasured those white mice. Back then, he spent a lot of money to cultivate them. Usually, some of the teachers in the courtyard wanted to buy a few, but Principal Xia wouldn't let them. This time, he was really generous. And then, asked the Jiao Ma curiously. Zheng Tan also perked up his ears to listen. And then, the Jiao Pa slowly drank the mung bean soup and said, the 2 white mice were heroically killed in less than a minute. Chapter 253. Just as Zheng Tan thought, the red-haired rat did look smart and cute, but behind that was a ferocious nature, as well as the nature of bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Judging from the way the researchers treated the red-haired rat, during this period of time, the red-haired rat did not encounter any threats at all. It ate well and drank well. Even the wood it used to grind its teeth on was custom-made. The hardness of the wood was selected after many calculations and measurements to be suitable for it to grind its teeth. Even if it bit to death the 2 white mice that Dean Xia had carefully cultivated, no one would do anything to it. Instead, they would contact the mice cultivated by other research institutions to discuss countermeasures to implement the Sustainable Development strategy. Who knew if they would come back with international aid in the future? In short, that red-haired mouse would be lucky in the future. It was said that any new decision made by the institute regarding the rat would require a meeting and the approval of a few authoritative figures before it could be implemented. It was also because of this that the rat had become very cocky recently. According to the Jiao Pa, this rat dared to bare its teeth at the researchers and did not give face to anyone. It was always causing trouble and was fearless. If it could not finish drinking water, it would jump into the water trough to play with it. Now, it was even picky about its food. It had to eat fresh everything, or else it would go on a hunger strike. In fact, until now, this rat had not really gone on a hunger strike. The breeders were always using different methods to serve it. Jing Tan saw the 2 photos taken by the Jiao Pa recently. The red-haired rat was a size bigger than when Jing Tan first caught it. It was also clearly chubbier. Some rats had to live in fear and sneak into the sewers to steal food, such as domestic rats. Others were carefully served, such as this red-haired rat. Rats were infuriated to death when compared to other rats. Once, when Jing Tan went to the Jiao Pa's office to climb through the window, he happened to bump into Principal Xie, who was about to drive out. However, Principal Xie did not reprimand Jing Tan. Instead, he smiled warmly at Jing Tan. After returning home, Jing Tan got the answer from Jiao Pa recently. Dean Xie had used the red-haired rat to secure a lot of projects and support from various parties. Jiao Pa was also one of the beneficiaries. Although the red-haired rat was no longer Jiao Pa's private property, Jiao Pa still benefited a lot from it. With the approval of a few big shots, Jiao Pa's title of associate professor would soon be removed. Moreover, it was much easier for Jiao Pa to apply for projects now. As the saying goes, having someone in the government makes things easier. Sometimes, success or failure could be decided with just a word from someone. Even in this circle, which was regarded as a pure land with a halo, changes were already quietly happening. Because of this, Yuan Zi once sighed to Jiao Pa when he came over, "Your cat is worth it, King worth it." Every time Yuan Zi came to the Jiao family, he had to do one thing: worship black charcoal. In Yuan Zi's own words, he was not worshipping a cat, he was worshipping the god of wealth. Now, Jing Tan was already numb to Yuan Zi's way of doing things. In his opinion, Yuan Zi was just an idiot. Your cat is really a god. Old Jiao Pa, let me tell you, ever since I worshipped this Shinsai, the company has been developing positively. Hey, let me show you my collection. Yuan Zi, who was drunk, was very talkative. He took out his phone and flipped through the photo album, insisting on showing it to Jiao Pa. Jing Tan moved closer to take a look. There was a photo album named Jinsai in the phone, and it was full of black cats. Jing Tan and Yuan Zi's office and home were custom-made black Jinsai cats. Don't make it sound so magical. It's just a coincidence that I ran into something. It's a small probability event, Jiao Pa replied. Yuan Zi was about to explain, when Jiao Pa's phone suddenly rang. Jiao Pa gestured to Yuan Zi to answer the call first. He took out his phone and looked at it. It was an unknown number. Jiao Pa did not rush to answer. Instead, he waited for a while. If the other party hung up quickly, he didn't plan on answering. This kind of thing happened often. After he answered, it was either a promotion, a wrong number, or a scammer. There were also some who wanted to ask about the red-haired rat. No matter what, he didn't want to answer. Unexpectedly, the phone kept ringing this time. The other party seemed to be saying, "If you don't answer, I'll keep calling." Jiao Pa pressed the answer button. He was not in a hurry to introduce himself. "Hello?" Jing Tan listened to the voice on the phone. He also suspected that it was about the red-haired rat. Recently, the red-haired rat was still in the limelight. However, the other party didn't seem to be talking about the red-haired rat. They were talking about something else. Jing Tan couldn't hear them clearly. He only heard a few words. "Yes, I am. Yes. It's my cat." Jiao Pa looked in the direction of Jing Tan on the sofa. Yuan Zi, who was thirsty and about to drink some water, immediately listened to the Jiao Pa's call. He didn't even drink the water. He kept holding the cup and listened to the Jiao Pa's call. His eyes kept glancing in the direction of Jingtan. It's convenient. I'll be home tonight. The address is on the 5th floor of Building B in the East District. Okay, I'll see you later. Jiao Pa hung up the phone and looked at Jingtan with a puzzled face. He wondered what the cat had done in the year that he had been away. Who was it? Yuan Zi asked. The person said his name was Yen He. He asked for my name and whether black charcoal was my cat. He said he would come over later to discuss something. Jiao Pa had never heard the other party's voice. This was the first time he had talked to the person called Yen He. What the other party wanted to talk about was obviously related to his cat. Previously, he had suspected that it was about the red-haired rat. However, the other party didn't mention anything related to the red-haired rat. But other than that, what else could they talk about? He even came over to discuss in person. His tone sounded like he was giving him a lot of benefits. Yuan Zi's face turned serious. Anyway, we can't sell this moneymaker. Jiao Pa cleared the things in the living room and discussed with Yuan Zi what to do later. Of course, I don't need you to tell me that. The name Yen He sounds a little familiar. Yuan Zi didn't plan to leave right away. He decided to stay a little longer to see what the visitor was up to. At the same time, he wanted to support his brother. Although he was only the boss of a not-so-famous company, he had his own way of judging people after so many social engagements over the past few years. Don't worry, I'll help you sound him out later. If there's anything, we'll take care of it together. Jingtan was even more confused. He carefully thought back to what he had done in the past few months. It seemed like he hadn't done anything that would offend the heavens and the gods. There shouldn't be anyone who would come and complain or blame him. However, the name Yen He did seem to have heard it somewhere before. He really couldn't remember where at the moment. About half an hour later, Yen He arrived at the Jiao family. Only then did Jingtan know who this person was. No wonder the name sounded familiar. Wasn't this Yen He the son of the old lady who lived by the lake? However, he had often heard the old lady mention Shao He and other people say President Yen, so he didn't match the name Yen He. As for Yuan Zi, this guy's reaction was even more intense. Originally, he was sitting on the sofa with an "I'm not easy to talk to" look on his face. After seeing Yen He, he immediately jumped up from the sofa with a smile on his face. President Yen, it's you. Jingtan. So, Yuan Zi, this amusing idiot, changed sides at the first second they met? Yuan Zi and Yuan Zi had met at a banquet and chatted for a while. At that time, one of Yen He's subsidiary company's goods needed to be inspected again. There were some problems with the company's quality inspection department, and there were also some problems with the test reagents and drugs that they had purchased. Therefore, Yen He wanted to find other companies to help with the inspection. Yuan Zi deliberately found an opportunity to promote his company. Both parties exchanged business cards. After that, Yen He didn't contact Yuan Zi again. Obviously, he didn't think highly of Yuan Zi's company. And now, Yuan Zi didn't expect to meet this potential big client that he had missed by the skin of his teeth. He thought that he wouldn't come into contact with him for a long time. However, looking at Yen He's reaction, Jingtan guessed that he probably didn't remember who Yuan Zi was at all. Yuan Zi introduced himself. Yen He didn't know if Yen He really remembered him or if he was just pretending. He smiled and said a few words, then went straight to the topic. It turned out that the old lady had agreed to go to the south with the old man who came looking for her. It would probably be very difficult for her to come back in the future. Yen He also didn't want the old lady to live here. It was too far away. Even if the old lady returned to Chuhua City, he wouldn't be able to take care of her. Yen He had another property in Chuhua City. When the old lady came back, she would directly live there. There was no one living in the house here, so it would be a waste to keep it. He planned to sell it. However, the old lady was the kind of person who would develop feelings for the house after living in it for a long time. She had a lot of requirements for the buyer. She didn't think much of it until a few days ago when the old lady was reading the newspaper and saw Jingtan in the photo. At that time, we didn't know that the cat in the newspaper was yours, but the old lady saw it at a glance. The old lady said that this was fate. She asked me to come over and ask if your family had any intention of buying a house. He briefly explained the matter. Jiao Pa and Yuan Zi were both smart people. He's words were half true and half false. Who would believe that the house couldn't be sold? Who didn't have a few friends or relatives who liked the house? However, he could definitely come over because of the old lady. Otherwise, this old CEO would never deign to come over in the midst of his busy schedule. Indeed, he originally planned to sell the house to a relative of his friend. The other party was also a good person. The old lady was still thinking about it. When she was about to agree, she saw the news in the newspaper and recognized the cat. She asked someone to inquire about it. When she saw that the Jiao family with 4 people and a cat living in such a small house, she thought that they would have to buy a big house sooner or later, right? The old lady felt that she could be where she was today because of Jingtan. She didn't lack money. What mattered was fate. It didn't matter if you were a human or a cat. When people reached this age, some of the things that they cared about were difficult to understand. Even if He, the filial son, didn't understand the old lady's actions, he would still nod in agreement. It was just a house. Compared to the old lady, it was nothing. He could afford to lose it. He didn't sit for long. After he explained the matter, he asked the Jiao Pa to think about it and give him a reply as soon as possible. After all, the old lady would be going to the south soon. He just had to wait for the result. After he left, Yuan Zi shouted exaggeratedly, "Old Jiao, do coincidences like this happen often in your family?" Yuan Zi didn't believe that he didn't see the rising trend of the real estate market. At this time, he still wanted to sell the house at a low price. This was like a pie falling from the sky. Why didn't such good things happen to him? The Jiao Pa didn't say anything. He was deep in thought. "Old Jiao, just agree. If you miss this opportunity, you won't get another one," Yuan Zi urged. Chapter 254. After the Jiao Pa made his decision, he brought Jingtan to the lakeside villa after dinner the next day. The old lady had been waiting at home for a long time. When she saw Jingtan, her eyes narrowed with a smile, making the Jiao Pa's eyelids twitch. What exactly happened to make the old lady so affectionate to her cat son? Her affectionate attitude was not like that of an ordinary pet. No matter how special a cat was, in the eyes of most people, it was just an animal. The old lady was obviously overly affectionate, which made the Jiao Pa even more suspicious. What was she doing without the family knowing? When he went over yesterday, he only mentioned a few things casually and did not go into detail. The Jiao Pa was still suspicious. After all, it was hard to believe that someone could get such a bargain in this day and age, but it really happened. The Jiao Pa had saved up some money in the past 2 years. He could buy a new 3-bedroom house, but he might not be able to afford the villa here. Moreover, the other party had lowered the price so low. Any normal person would be suspicious. The Jiao Pa came over today to clarify the matter. Otherwise, he would not be at ease. No matter how big the bargain was, he would not make a move before he understood everything. After arriving at the villa, the Jiao Pa became more and more uneasy. The car parked outside was expensive and had a Nanjing license plate. There were also servants and bodyguards in the house. Even though they were dressed in casual clothes, they obviously had the aura of bodyguards. The Jiao Pa did not recognize them as relatives of the 2 old ladies. "Where is black charcoal? Come, I've prepared something for you to eat." The old lady called Jingtan over. The old lady was usually very polite, but she was too happy to see Jingtan today. Moreover, the old lady's life was really good recently. She was so happy that she directly put the Jiao Pa behind her. It was the old man behind the old lady who called the Jiao Pa over to sit. Jingtan looked at the old man's series of actions, as if he was the host. It seemed that the communication between the two old men was very smooth, and their relationship was developing quickly. The old lady realized that she had done something wrong and apologized. Before the Jiao Pa could say, "It's okay," the old man waved his hand and said, "It's okay. He won't mind." Jiao Pa, the old lady looked at the old man reproachfully. This was too rude. While they were talking about the house, Jingtan had nothing to do. He just stayed at the side. The food and drinks were specially prepared by the old lady. It was not cat food. It seemed that she had done a background check on Jingtan. Jiao Pa mainly wanted to know how Jingtan and old Madame Yang got to know each other. If he knew the process, he would be able to infer other things. Old Madame Fu slowly recounted the incident, and as she spoke, she was filled with emotions. The old man seemed to be unwilling to let the old lady talk about this. Thinking about it, the old lady's health was not very good at that time, and she was at a crossroads waiting to make a decision. If the surgery was not successful, and the old lady did not make it. The old man's face turned pale when he thought of this. He only calmed down after the old lady patted his hand. After explaining the incident, the old man did not let the old lady talk about the details. He directly talked about the house. The old man took over the topic and directly talked to the Jiao Pa. The Jiao Pa did have the intention to buy a house in the past. Now that the price of the house was rising, he wanted to buy a house early. Even if he did not live in it now, it would be good to buy a house as a backup. He did not expect to encounter such a good thing. After learning the whole story, although he did not understand the old lady's decision, he did not have any other doubts about the house. He told the old man. The old lady sat quietly by the side and listened to the conversation with a smile on her face. She glanced at Jingtan and recalled the first time she saw the black cat. That day, she was very conflicted. She did not make a decision about the surgery. The black cat reminded her of some memories hidden deep in her heart. Moreover, when the black cat raised its paw and touched her palm, the old lady's heart suddenly trembled. It was an inexplicable feeling. She felt as if she had received a blessing from the black cat. At that time, she thought that maybe she could make it through. In the eyes of others, this was just the old lady's psychological effect. However, in many cases, the psychological changes of a patient's condition could not be ignored. Whether or not the old lady was affected by Jingtan's slap, the old lady felt that she could make the right choice. She could make it through, and now she met the person she had missed. Her life had become better, and it was all thanks to this black cat. This cat was very kind. The old lady had indeed lowered the price of the house. Moreover, the various decorations of the house were very suitable for family life. When the house was originally renovated, the materials used were excellent. There was also a piano, tables, chairs, benches, beds, wardrobes, and other high-end items. The furniture that was left behind were all in good condition. Overall, the Jiao family had indeed gained a great deal. It was as if a pie had fallen from the sky. While they were talking about the house, the old man was also testing the Jiao Pa. He wanted to know what kind of person this buyer was. However, when the topic was about the Jiao Pa's mentor, Yuan Zi's father, Old Master Yuan, the old man sighed. He was also friends with the late Old Master Yuan. When Old Master Yuan passed away, the old man was busy with business and did not know about it. He only heard about it later. However, at that time, Old Master Yuan had already been buried in his hometown. After that, Yuan Zi's career was mainly in the central region. Other than business trips, he rarely went to the south. The old man did not meet Yuan Zi and did not keep in touch with him. Now that he mentioned it to the Jiao Pa, he realized that they were actually not completely unrelated. Because of this, the old man was much kinder to the Jiao Pa. The smile on his face was much more sincere. The conversation with the Jiao Pa became more and more agreeable, especially the recent incident with the red-haired rat. When it ended, the old man's displeasure completely disappeared. "Since I've decided to sell it to you, it's up to you whether you want to live in it or rent it," the old lady said. The old man did not interrupt, but the smile on his face disappeared. Don't worry. If we live in it, we will definitely take good care of it. Even if we want to rent it, we will choose someone who cares about the house, the Jiao Pa said seriously. What he said was true. Jiao family members cared about the house very much. Although the house in the courtyard was small, it was orderly and not messy. It had the warmth of a small home, and they were used to living there. If the villa was rented out, the Jiao Pa was not willing to let someone with a messy private life ruin his house. After the Jiao Pa said that, Zheng Tan noticed that the old man's smile had returned to his face. It was obvious that the old man was very satisfied with the Jiao Pa's words. He sneered in his heart. This old man is so nosy. If I didn't know better, I would think that this old man loves this piece of land deeply. The old man gave the Jiao Pa a business card and told him that he and Yuan Zi could go to Nanqing to have fun. This was the old man's personal business card. It was not for business purposes. Okay. When I go to Nanqing, I will definitely visit Uncle Han. Zheng Tan looked at the card. The old man's surname was Han, and his name was Han Fei. Zheng Tan thought that he sounded like a bandit. Old man Han was in a hurry to leave Chuhua City and return to Nanqing. Once the decision was made, he immediately got it done. Jiao Pa did not need to worry about anything. After the matter was settled, Jiao Ma and Jiao Pa came to the villa to take a look. For the time being, they did not tell the two children. It was better not to make this matter public. After all, the Jiao Pa had been in the limelight this summer. If this matter was spread out, those jealous people would definitely make a scene. Although they did not say it, the Jiao Pa indirectly asked the two children about this. Although Jiao Yuan liked a big house, he still preferred to live in the courtyard. After all, the other children were in the courtyard. It was more convenient. Little Pomelo thought that as long as everyone was together, it did not matter where they lived. Zheng Tan was more inclined to live in the courtyard. It was more convenient to walk around. Moreover, although the campus area was not absolutely safe, it was much better than outside. Since they all wanted to stay in the courtyard, then the villa could be rented out. However, the tenants had to be strictly checked. The new semester was about to start. At this time, there were many people renting houses. The Jiao Pa was not in a hurry to rent it out. The most important thing was to look at the people. In the last 2 days of August, the school was already very lively. People carrying bags of various sizes could be seen everywhere. There were also some parents who were sending their children to college for the first time. Zheng Tan squatted on a high tree and looked down at the people coming and going below. He also looked at the new cute girls. Every year, from June to September, it was the time when the new and the old were replaced. From the end of April to the beginning of June, the school broadcast all kinds of sentimental sentiments about the brothers who slept on the bunk above me. However, during the last few days, the school could not wait to stamp the word "scram" on the departure procedures. Leave as soon as possible to make room for the new students. In September, the atmosphere was completely different. The school broadcast was full of youthful, positive, and hot-blooded feelings. It gave the new students the impression that the senior is very beautiful and the senior is very hardworking. There was a large flower bed next to the sycamore tree that Zheng Tan was staying in. There were many people sitting at the edge of the flower bed. The large pine tree in the middle of the flower bed provided a large amount of shade. There was a new student who was carrying a mop over. When he saw that there was no more space at the edge of the flower bed, he went to a shady area and sat on his mop. He crossed his legs and shook his feet. He took out a palm-sized MP4 and opened an electronic document to read. "Bro, what are you doing?" someone beside him asked. "Reading a novel." The person who was shaking his feet showed the MP4 in his hand to the other person and told him the plot of the novel with great interest. "Oh, I've heard of this. It's about farming monsters and leveling up. My cousin likes to read it, but I think it's quite ridiculous," the person beside him said with some disdain. He felt that this person's taste was too low. This time, the person did not agree. "What's wrong with farming monsters and leveling up? Are you discriminating against me or what? Haven't you been farming monsters and leveling up your whole life? Doing homework for various subjects, doing all kinds of exams, changing the map for junior high school exams, changing the map for the high school exams, and changing the map for the college entrance exams. During this period, you'll be farming monsters. Maybe you're talented, or maybe you're lucky. Farming monsters to level up to the level of a graduate student. Later on, you'll find out that university students are everywhere, and graduate students are as common as dogs. Isn't life just about farming monsters and leveling up? The person swayed the flip-flops on his feet. He sat on his mop bag and continued to read the e-book on his MP4. He did not care about his words at all, nor did he feel that there was anything wrong with them. Not far behind him, the people in the graduate student reception area looked at him silently with subtle expressions.